I mentioned a minute ago that I'd heard today that John Daly, who's been a friend of ours on this program and just one of the most just enjoyable people to be around I've ever met, was out there pushing the Lane train to Fayetteville. And I looked down, and John has joined us for a moment to give his opinion. A big Arkansas fan. Of course, he played golf there. John, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you bet, Paul. How you doing?
I am doing great, and I miss seeing you and talking to you, but there's nothing better than to talk to you about Razorback football. And so tell us what you hear and what you think ought to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, I think I would love for Lane to come. We're pretty good friends, and he knows the SEC, better being under Saban and, at Tennessee. And I just think he'd be a great fit. It was, my picks were him, and I was kind of hoping Rex Ryan might have had a chance too.
He is a good guy. I know Rex. Rex would be really – maybe Rex will come as a coordinator.
Well, he said he'd bring his brother, but, I don't know. Those are my two favorite picks, but Lane would just he would change it probably quicker than most coaches would, and, we got to get the passion back at Arkansas. And
well, John, let me ask you this, because we had a guest on earlier that wondered whether Lane would take the job if offered. You seem to know more than all of us. What do you think?
He's not telling me much. I've just been bugging him for the last 3 or 4 days. Please come to Arkansas. But he's not saying too much about it, but he never said no, and he hasn't said yes. But, I think he's the one that I think can turn our program around, but I feel like it's going to take 3 years. It's just sad to see Arkansas football this way. And I love Chad Morris, and I love Coach Bielema, and it's a shame they couldn't get it done. But, I think Lane can, and we just got to give him time if he does come.
No, John, listen, we always enjoy talking to you, and I think you're saying what you've said publicly makes a big impact. Have you expressed your thoughts to the people that matter at Arkansas?
Oh, yeah. Me and Hunter, I've texted Hunter. I gave him Lane's number.
I like that.
He didn't ask for anything. I gave him Rex Ryan and Lane's number, and I said these are the two guys that my personal opinion would be someone that could change the program. But, it just be – I think he was the right guy for the job, and whether he takes it or not, I just want him to know, and he already knows, that I'd love for him to come to the Hill and change our program around.
Welcome back. So what's going on at Arkansas? Let's be joined by Josh Bertuccini. He's the program director at 92.1 The Ticket, our proud home in Northwest Arkansas, and the number one sports show out there, and clearly has his pulse on Razorback sports. JB, great to have you on again. It's always a pleasure. So help us understand what's going on with this coaching search. What's up?
Well, it's great to talk to you, Paul, and I wish I could just answer whatever questions you have right now. I think a lot up in the air, but exciting times here. I think we're getting close to something.
The hot name, at least on social media, has been Lane Kiffin. Your view on that name?
Look, I think it's a name that continues to get a lot of momentum around here. Lane Kiffin's history as well as anybody. He's somebody who got a chance to be a big-time coach at a really young age. His father was a coach. He was groomed to be a coach. And when he got to be the Oakland Raiders head coach at 32, I think at the time, 12 years ago, a lot of people thought it's just not what you do. It's just Al Davis being Al Davis. But really, Paul, the more you think about it, that was a pretty groundbreaking moment because it kind of opened the door to the youth movement in terms of coaching. And we've seen a lot of 30-year-old and certainly, early 40s type coaches get a chance in recent years who maybe didn't in the past. So I feel like Lane Kiffin's a guy who perhaps had his moment the first time around a little early, but here we are a dozen years later, and obviously the time at USC and the time with Nick Saban at Alabama, he seems like a different guy right now. He's certainly had a pretty impressive run at Florida Atlantic for 3 years, a school that had done essentially nothing before he got that job. I think it's a different Lane Kiffin who's getting a lot of buzz here in Fayetteville right now.
So if you could, and I know you will, break it down for us in terms of who you think are the legitimate candidates and ultimately how you see it playing out.
Well, absolutely, Paul. I mean, let's be right point blank where we were, when we had this conversation, feels like less than a month ago when Chad Morris was fired. I think the names are names that tend to make sense, right? The same kinds of names we talked about last time. Let's be specific here. Names like Mike Norvell, names like Matt Campbell, who got the extension at Iowa State today, a Mike Leach at Washington State. Lane Kiffin, if you remember, Paul, was the name we mentioned in our conversation last month, and it hasn't gone away. Obviously, the Gus Malzahn talk was something that was getting some buzz around here, but then he goes out and wins the Iron Bowl, and that's kind of the end to that discussion. So it seems like that relationship between Gus and Arkansas continues to be a little star-crossed, but that name's still out there. You've heard talk about a name like Chris Peterson at Washington after that surprising announcement yesterday. So, names like that, Norvell, Campbell, Peterson, Malzahn, Leach, Kiffin, these names have stayed pretty steady here over the last few weeks. I don't think we've had a ton of change. And by all accounts, Arkansas has tried to vet and do its diligence on all of these names. And it sure seems like Hunter Yurichek, who's not afraid to make a splashy kind of different hire like he made with Eric Musselman and the basketball program 7 months ago, which is obviously getting a lot of buzz around here right now with his great start. Yurichek seems to have pinpointed Lane Kiffin as the kind of young up-and-comer, if you will, the next guy who's got the brand, who's got the style, and got the swagger to take this thing back to at least a competitive place, Paul. We're not talking about winning conference championships at the University of Arkansas right now. We're talking about getting the bowl game, any bowl game, and I think Lane Kiffin's the kind of guy who could achieve that here.
Okay, there are a lot of names you mentioned, and I don't want to go over every one of them, but some I think are not going to Arkansas, maybe going elsewhere. But I'm most interested in continuing the conversation on Kiffin because, I believe Kiffin is looking at the job. I don't know if he's made up his mind yet. He has a game this week, so he's probably unlikely to spend a lot of time doing anything other than preparing for Saturday. But is Lane Kiffin hireable at Arkansas would be my most important question. Will they hire? If he said yes, would they? If he agreed to consider it, would they hire him?
Well, I think Lane Kiffin's history as well as anybody, and I think the answer to that is yes. And for anybody who's out there questioning Lane Kiffin as a coach, I go back to what we started this conversation talking about, Paul. He's a lifer. He comes from a coaching family. His pops, Monty Kiffin, was the defensive coordinator here in the late 70s for a few years under Lou Holtz, who had several really good seasons that don't get talked about a lot historically. And Lane actually, for whatever it's worth, lived in Fayetteville, in his early years. So back to Kiffin. I think he's grown up. I think he's a brand guy. I sure think he gets Twitter as well as anybody. Nothing against somebody like Nick Saban, whom Lane Kiffin obviously worked for 3 years. But Lane Kiffin gets Twitter. He tweets. He understands the social media angles. He's got a lot to like from an offensive ingenuity standpoint. And I think, again, what he's done at Florida Atlantic over the last few years has been impressive. He won 11 games there his first year. I know they fell off to 5 last year, Paul, but they bounced right back, as you know, to 9 this year. And you just brought up probably the holdup in this situation, which is Florida Atlantic has a conference championship game to go and play on Saturday. And I know folks talk a lot about bowl games these days, but, man, you all know, Paul, conference championships are one of the big talking points for coaches when they try to motivate their teams. And I think Lane Kiffin wants to coach Florida Atlantic in his Conference USA Championship game this weekend. I think he's done a lot of work the last 3 years to rehab his image as a carpetbagger, as a flighty guy, even though I think that stuff is unfounded. And by nature, this profession leads to folks trying to move around for a better opportunity. I think he wants to coach that game. I think he will coach that game. I think based on his press conference a few hours ago in Boca Raton, he is not denying the Arkansas angle, but he's trying to focus the conversation on winning his 10th game of the year there at Florida Atlantic. And so I feel like Arkansas probably, as much as I can gather, Paul, and I'm trying to gather as much as I can, they want to let him coach that game. I think that's a good look both ways if they can coach that game. And for the folks who say that's not even realistic, well, I look no further than Scott Frost in Nebraska and Central Florida a couple of years ago. You can make that happen if that's a priority to you. I think Lane Kiffin, for a lot of those reasons and more, would do very well here. And I think there's a lot more smoke and probably ultimately fire to this stuff right now, Kiffin to Arkansas.
JB, would Lane Kiffin be the most sizzle hire that Hunter Yurachek could make?
I think you're on the money. I think when you look at the names I just brought up, and obviously I respect your show, Paul, I think you're right to brush a few of those names off. It's probably not going to happen with several of the guys I mentioned, so what's the point of going back all over them? The one name that keeps coming up here, besides Lane Kiffin, Paul, surprisingly or not, is Mike Leach. Mike Leach at Washington State is a name that seems to have a lot of currency around here. Maybe it's because, like we talked about before, his propensity to recruiting to the smaller towns like Lubbock, Texas, and Pullman, Washington, lends people to believe that he could get recruits to come and play football in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But I think there's also some concern about Leach. He answers your question about the sizzle, but you also wonder a little bit about the long-term component there. And I know folks can say the same thing about Lane Kiffin right now, but Mike Leach is 15 years older than Lane Kiffin, and I think Lane Kiffin wants a crack at the big time. And as you all know, the SEC is big-time football. So really, in response to that question, Matt Campbell was the other name I would have thrown at you. He re-upped with Iowa State today for big money for however many years. I think Mike Leach is the one other name that continues to get bandied about. And I think ultimately Kiffin, with the youth, with the pedigree, with the Twitter profile, which I know I keep bringing up here, I think that's a name that has more flash and substance to it right now than even a name like Mike Leach.
Not that it's your job, JB. You're a sports talk show host, but if Lane Kiffin called you and said, listen, I'm seriously considering this job, but I don't like the roster, I don't like the trajectory, I don't want to go there and get my head bashed in, what would you say to him?
I'd say those are all real feelings and real thoughts, and you're thinking about this job from a 360-degree kind of angle. Look, it's not easy to win here. You know that, Paul. You talk about it on your show, and you say nice things. You say respectful things. You understand the Razorbacks mean a lot to the 3 million people in this state, but it's not easy. You've got to recruit over a large chunk of land. You've got to keep most of the big recruits in this state and go get some primo recruits in Texas, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Missouri. That's difficult. That's a lot of ground to cover. You've got to have a really good staff in place if you're going to make this thing work. And I think that's one of the reasons why, again, Paul, I think it would work here. I think Lane Kiffin has done a really underrated job of cultivating relationships in that coaching fraternity. He's got connections, and I don't know if we need to talk names here, but he's got connections to coaches who could come in here on day one and present a pretty interesting, not only recruiting kind of staff, but also a game day strategist kind of staff. And if some of those names, if even a couple of those names prove to be valid, I think if Lane Kiffin walks in on the first day with guys around him that he believes in, that he thinks are committed to the next, whatever, foreseeable future, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of being in Arkansas, I do think it's a job you can do well at. So I would tell Lane Kiffin, this is doable. You've got the skill set to do it. There's a reason Arkansas wants you, but how badly do you want it? We hear a lot of talk that he really enjoys Boca Raton. How could you not, Paul? Good weather, the beach life. He's a big fisher. He likes to go out and fish on his boat in the open ocean. I know you know that stuff. So, look, Arkansas is a great place. I'm not going to talk it down. There is no beach here. There is no ocean here. So can you adapt to the culture enough to get that coaching game plan that you've got going on operating at a high level. I think if you're committed to it and you've got the right staff, you can most definitely get it done. And if you get it done here, Paul, you well know, you're going to be a rock star legend in this state for life. So it's really a question of what Lane Kiffin wants at this point in his life.
No, and JB, I'm sure you've. I mean, I've heard he's looked around at a staff, and I don't have any doubt. I've heard some of the names as you have. I'm not going to discuss them because he's still coaching a game. But we will stay in touch. This is a very interesting story, JB. Thanks for sharing your incredibly valuable insight. We will talk soon.
Anytime, Paul. Thank you.
Great to talk to Josh Bertuccini, JB in the mornings out in Northwest Arkansas, the voice there of Razorback sports.
Yeah, Paul, time for today's headlines. As you know, we have 3 coaching vacancies currently open in the SEC. It's been quite a week of speculation, rumors. There's even been some fake Twitter accounts. But one thing we did learn today is that there's one name we can cross off the list of candidates, and that is Washington State coach Mike Leach. Washington State announcing a 1-year contract extension today. ESPN's Chris Lowe reported that Leach had conversations with Arkansas about its coaching job, but it appears for the time being that Leach will remain in Pullman.
Okay, one thing that Tuscaloosa might have been paying attention to last night, Lane Kiffin expected, to be hired by Ole Miss as their head coach. Tim, your thoughts on Lane coming back to the SEC?
I think it's very intriguing. I think it's going to be really fun for us because he's got a bold personality and he's fun to talk about. He's done a great job at FAU, and I think he's going to bring a lot of excitement to Ole Miss.
Here's his son when he found out the news.
So, we are going on a jet on Monday. To where? Your dad is the new head coach of Ole Miss.
Let's go!
He did the SEC chant. Paul, you know Lane well. What do you think about this and the impact it could have on the league?
Listen, I love my job here, but I would like to take a sabbatical from the SEC Network and go cover Lane Kiffin's first year as a beat reporter.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, this is going to be unbelievable, but keep your eye on his staff. I hear pretty reliably that he is trying to pick off a valuable person on Nick Saban's staff as we speak. If he gets that person, it will send some ripples across the country.
This is such a great move for Ole Miss. And when you think about what they had success with, it was high-powered offense and a defense that went fast. And I'm sure Lane has paid attention to the SEC since he's been at FAU. And then think about this. Like, his son just went crazy. Shout out to FAU for giving Lane Kiffin the job back in the SEC.
Okay, you've got to think, too, Tim, it's got something to do with John Rice Plumlee, the quarterback at Ole Miss, of why Lane Kiffin would want to go there.
No doubt. I think he's starting with a possible superstar. I think he's got to mold some things around with John Rice, but John Rice has very unique ability and talent, and I think you can mold. But the one thing that Lane Kiffin's going to do, he's going to bring excitement. He's going to bring attention. He's going to bring the media. He's going to bring us. He's going to bring so much excitement there. That's going to help recruiting a lot.
And to your point about the quarterback, think about what he did. It was Jay Coker in the national championship when they said he wasn't good enough to start.
Right.
Blake Sims broke all the passing records at Alabama, and Jalen Hurts had a great season when they said he couldn't throw. He'll make them better offensively for sure.
One thing about SEC Nation, we never announce where we're going. I'm announcing right now, we're going to Oxford next year for the Alabama game.
All right, it's upcoming Tuesday. National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame will be inducting that 2019 class. In this class, Vince Young, Jake Plummer, also being inducted as an honorary member, the Goodyear Blimp. Been all over college football over the years.
Big news in the SEC is Lane Kiffin coming back to the conference, hired by Ole Miss, according to all the reports. And, of course, Ole Miss, that was Ed O's old job. But that also leaves a pair of head coaching vacancies still left in the SEC. Missouri has won 2 SEC East titles since joining the conference, but went 25-25 in 4 seasons under Barry Odom. And the Razorbacks haven't won more than 8 games since finishing 11-2, winning the Cotton Bowl in 2011. Paul, off the top of the show, you told us that you're actually going to go to Oxford to be the beat reporter for Lane Kiffin because you love the fact that he's going to be back in the league and back in Oxford, excuse me. I want to talk about some of these other vacancies, though. What do we think Paul, Missouri needs? What do we think Arkansas needs? Where's your head up with all of that?
Well, there's a lot of confusion of both. I mean, Arkansas fired Chad Morris a month and a half ago, and they still don't seem like they know where they're going. And Missouri fired an alum who was fairly well respected, and they've swung and missed a couple of times. In fact, the athletic director recommended several names to the board, and the board threw them back at him. I've never heard of anything quite like that, Marcus.
I was so disappointed with the Missouri firing. I thought Barry Odom was perfect for the job. And look, this was a season, obviously, not good. They went down towards the end. But a year previous, they ripped off 6 wins in a row, and he was showing the ability to get this team going. Lost to Wyoming. We were there the next week. Got his team to respond against West Virginia. There's a lot of things in that Missouri situation that I just don't clearly understand. But when you go to Arkansas, I don't know this in particular. Paul, what kind of job is Arkansas? What do they need in order to bring themselves in? They're in the West. That's number one. What kind of hire can be made at Arkansas to get them to the point where they need to be to compete like that?
Well, they hoped they could bring Lane Kiffin in, and he clearly did not want the job. He wanted to go to Ole Miss. So, I mean, they need a solid football coach. Chad Morris was hired primarily because he had ties to Texas high school. That didn't work out very well.
I think Arkansas is a better job than you. We've talked about it a few times. I think it's a pretty good job. They have a good fan base. There's a lot of money. There's new facilities. And wasn't that long ago, Arkansas was competing. We played against them in the SEC championship game. This was a good team with Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, Peyton Hillis, a lot of NFL players. You can get talent at Arkansas. You just have to have the right guy that can bring a spark back to Arkansas.
Doesn't it feel like it needs to be a physical brand of football again at Arkansas too? Not what Chad Morris is trying to do with that high-flying offense.
But it doesn't mean it has to be 7 tight ends.
Right,
you know?
right.
You can be physical and still be spread at the same time.
Here's the thing. Who are you pulling from, right? When we think about Arkansas, when Brett Bielema was there coming from Wisconsin with Rich Rod, they were a physical football team, run the ball, had a pretty athletic quarterback, Russell Wilson per se, to put them in situations. I think Arkansas goes to the formula that Greg Roman is using with Lamar Jackson at the Baltimore Ravens. It's tough to defend. Look, I don't care who you are. When you talk about Arkansas football, go back to when you were playing, when I was playing. They were going to bloody your nose. That's the way they play football, because I think the pool that they pull from.
Get those players.
Absolutely, because that's the guys that they recruited.
Absolutely.
That was the type of guys that they brought in. I think they need to get back to that.
And Arkansas can go into Texas and get some of those guys.
Yes, absolutely.
Paul, I'm hesitant to phrase this question this way, but I don't know how else to ask it. With Ole Miss already hiring Lane Kiffin, have they already won this, just looking around and saying who might be available, or are there people who you think could go to Arkansas, Missouri and really make a splash?
They're good coaches, but Lane Kiffin is Hollywood. And you take Hollywood to a campus like Oxford, which is a pretty cool place. The media will just fawn over Lane Kiffin. Now, I will tell you, there's a few people around here who are not thrilled with the hire. And I ran into, I'm not going to name names, but there are people that have been through here. And I think there is some concern. Remember, Mike Slive was exercised over him at Tennessee. I mean, they had some serious words. I think Lane Kiffin's a different coach than he was 10 years ago.
I do too.
Go ahead.
I really think Lane's a different guy than he was 10 years ago. I think he's grown as a man. I think he's grown as a father. I think he's grown as a coach. I think he's different than what he was.
It's not coaching for Lane, it's operations.
Yep.
It's everything outside of football. And to your point, Tim, I think you went to FAU to kind of get off the map and figure out how to kind of be a low-key coach but still good. I think it's a great hire for Ole Miss.
The search for a new head hog is over, and lots of fans waited on the tarmac in Fayetteville to greet him. Sam Pittman is the Razorbacks' next head football coach. And Dorian Kraft is with me now because this search had taken a lot of twists and turns. But the Razorbacks end up hiring a familiar face.
He is. Pittman, of course, coached under Brett Bielema, and he is known for his recruiting power. Let's go ahead and take a look at the moment that Pittman signed his contract today.
My pleasure to offer you the opportunity to be the head football coach at the University of Arkansas by signing this contract.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Woo pig suey, baby.
Well, there it is, the moment that Pittman became Arkansas's new head coach. He gave his wife and athletic director Hunter Yurachek a big hug when the deal was done. And now the celebrations begin. The campus is already planning a big homecoming for Pittman tomorrow, followed by a press conference.
Sunday, the Razorbacks made it official. Sam Pittman is the next head football coach at the University of Arkansas. Pittman returns to Fayetteville from Athens, Georgia, where he spent the last 4 seasons as the offensive line coach for the Bulldogs. Prior to his time with Georgia, he spent 3 seasons with the Razorbacks as offensive line coach and recruiting coordinator from 2013 to 15 under Brett Bielema's staff. In 2017, Pittman helped lead the Georgia Bulldogs to 13 victories, an SEC title, and an appearance in the national championship game. Pittman's previous stops include Tennessee, North Carolina, and Northern Illinois. This is Pittman's first head coaching gig since 1991 when he led Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. Now, he's back in the SEC as a head coach, and he is going to try and revitalize a Razorback football program that hopes to compete once again. First mission for Pittman, recruiting.
And of course, that was our Hayden Bow, gave you with a look at how Sam Pittman got here. And let's take a closer look at Pittman's resume. He spent the last 3 seasons with the Georgia Bulldogs. He was promoted to associate head coach in February of 2019, as well as overseeing the offensive line last year under Pittman. The Bulldogs first in the SEC with nearly 240 rushing yards per game. They were second in the league in scoring. Of course, there were the 3 seasons here at Arkansas in 2013 and 2014. The Razorbacks led the conference in fewest sacks given up per game. And prior to Fayetteville, Pittman was an offensive line coach at both Tennessee and North Carolina. And as expected, reactions spread swiftly across social media. Carson Mulder saying if Chad drove in the left lane, Sam Pittman is a steamroller, taking up every lane and running over the competition. Frank Ragnow, of course, the former Razorback. I just can't believe it, man. Unreal. There is no better person out there. Bunch of freaks about to be on the hill. Freaking Sammy P. Chris says, I love Sam Pittman, great O-line coach, but it ain't going to work in Arkansas, folks. Don't blame him for taking the job one bit. It's a head coaching opportunity.
Your news starts now with this special Pig Trail Nation report.
He is back on the hill. Sam Pittman making the move from Athens, Georgia to Fayetteville, Arkansas, looking to rejuvenate the Hog football program. He is the new head Hog. The former Arkansas offensive line coach will be introduced during a public celebration tomorrow. He's known as one of the best to coach the O-line, one of the best to recruit. Now he's in charge at Arkansas after the Hogs fired Chad Morris November 10th, and Barry Lunny Jr. served 2 games in the interim. Pittman joined Kirby Smart's initial staff back in 2016, and the Dogs went on to play for the national championship in the 2017 season. This year, Georgia is the SEC East Division champ again, having just lost to LSU in the SEC title game in Atlanta. The 2014 Razorback O-line on Pittman's watch allowed the fewest sacks in the SEC, 1.08. His only previous head coaching experience, though, is from Hutchinson Community College.
I know Sam. He is a tremendous recruiter, a wonderful coach. The players would run through a wall for him. I believe he will put together a phenomenal staff and get this program back where it needs.
Go Hogs! Yes, sir!
And with that, the search is over. The Arkansas Razorbacks have a new head football coach. Sports Director Wes Moore joins us now with the latest. What can you tell us?
Well, it was a long roller coaster ride for the fans, but Hunter Yurachek has his man. Sam Pittman is coming back to Arkansas. Pittman was the offensive line coach for 3 seasons at Arkansas from 2013 to 2015. He spent the last 4 seasons at Georgia, where he was also the offensive line coach and associate head coach. The Bulldogs have won the SEC East the last 3 seasons. The 58-year-old grew up in Oklahoma and has been coaching in college the last 25 years. The reaction from former Razorbacks has been overwhelmingly positive.
I only had 1 year with Coach Pittman. My last year was his first year, but I wish I would have had all 5 years with him, because a massive, massive part of the success that I had and where I was taken in the draft and how long I played in the NFL was, honestly, I give that so much credit to Coach Pittman.
I was very excited. I know that Coach Pittman's a great man, great recruiter, great coach, and I think that he'll bring a tremendous amount of toughness to our football team. Extremely excited, great guy. I know he's going to get a fan base, the players, and everybody ready to run through a wall for in about 5 minutes.
Several former players took to Twitter to voice their excitement. Jeremy Sprinkle said, "Great hire, love Coach Pitt." Frank Ragnow tweeted, "I just can't believe it, man. There is no better person out there. Bunch of freaks about to be on the hill. Freaking Sammy P." Hunter Henry added, "Let's go. What a beast. This dude is going to bring in some freaks." Coach Pittman is expected to arrive in Fayetteville any minute now. He is expected to address the team later tonight around 9:30. Tomorrow, they will have a public celebration and introduce Coach Pittman to the fans at 3:30.
I don't think you have to do much to win 3 games or 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Chuck Barrett is at the podium, and we're going to go live right now to Chuck, and we'll hear more from Sam Pittman, the new head hog. And we will catch up with you a little bit later here after this press conference.
Sam Pittman. Now, we'd like to start our program by welcoming some very special guests who are here with us today, including Chancellor Joseph Steinmetz and his wife Sandy, our members of the Board of Trustees, including John Goodson, Steve Cox, Ed Fryer, Mark Waldrop, Kelly Eichler, and Dr. Stephen Broughton. Our faculty athletics representative, Gerald Jordan, is with us today. Jennifer Urachek and the Urachek family are here. Our Deputy Athletics Director, John Fagg, and his wife, Amanda, are with us today. Coach Ken Hatfield, alongside his brother, Dick Hatfield. We've got several Razorback head coaches who are with us today. We're glad all of you are here. Members of the Razorback Foundation Board, and the man who led the football program through this coaching transition, Coach Barry Lunny Jr. It is indeed an exciting time to be a Razorback as we officially welcome back Coach Sam Pittman and his wife Jamie to the state of Arkansas. And at this time, I'd like you to welcome a man to the podium who has worked tirelessly to find the next leader of the Razorbacks. We knew he was home when we saw the smoke rising. Let's welcome our Vice Chancellor and Director of Athletics, Hunter Urachek.
Wow, what a crowd. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here as we gather together as a Razorback family to welcome our new head football coach back to the University of Arkansas. I look forward to introducing you to Coach Pittman and his wife Jamie in a few minutes, but first I want to take this opportunity for a couple of thank yous. And I would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking Coach Barry Lunny Jr. for serving our football program as the interim head coach during a very challenging stretch. He poured his heart into our student athletes and our program during the past 4 weeks, and I cannot thank him enough for taking on this role for our university. So, Coach Lunny, thank you. And I want to thank the men sitting over here to my right, some of the members of our football team, our student athletes who I know have endured so much during the past 4 to 5 weeks, and I want to thank you guys for hanging in there with me. Great days are ahead for our football program, I promise you that. And please bear with me, because over the past few weeks, as I have led this search, there have been a number of people that have supported me and assisted me with this search that I want to thank. First, our university system president, Dr. Donald Bobbitt, our university chancellor, Joe Steinmetz, who's here with us today, our incredible board of trustees led by our chairman, Mr. John Goodson, and my right hand for the past couple of weeks, Mr. Steve Cox, who has been a tireless worker, Virginia. I'm glad you can have him back now. I also want to thank from our Board of Trustees, Mr. Ed Fryer. Mr. Fryer's right here. He allowed us to use his somewhat untrackable plane for this search. And I want to thank his pilots, Blake and Ricky. They had a lot of fun with their flight trackers trying to hide where that plane was going to and from. So thank you so much for allowing us to use your plane for the search. It makes my job so much easier to have access to that. I want to acknowledge our Deputy Athletic Director. Sam Pittman is known for his relentless recruiting, the tough and physical play of the players he coaches, and the development of NFL-ready linemen, and more importantly, the development of young men. The impact that Sam and Jamie Pittman clearly had on the Razorback football program and this community during their previous time here made it hard for me to believe that they had only been here for 3 years. As I quickly found out last night, they have touched the lives of so many people within our community and across this state. It is indeed an exciting day for our football program as we welcome back to Arkansas and introduce our new head football coach. And so without further ado, I want to turn it over to John George, our longtime public address announcer, for the official introduction.
All right, Razorback fans, are you ready to stand up? Let's stand up and call those Hogs!
Your eyes on your feet. More than anything, play the game confidently. Be a badass. You know what I mean?
Yes! Now, Razorback fans, let's welcome back to the Hill, joined by his wife, Jamie, the head coach of your Arkansas Razorbacks, Sam Pittman.
Yes, sir. Let's go Hogs. Well, I have some news for you. I was watching that video back there, and I had fooled myself thinking I lost a little weight since I was here. Wrong. I want to thank Hunter Yurchek, John Fagg, and Steve Cox, Board of Trustees, and Chancellor Steinmetz. You know, I met some of these guys yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it now? And I tell you what, great people that are in charge of the University of Arkansas, and people that love the university. And I want to thank Judy Henry. She's awesome. And she helped me. I think what she did was she bugged Hunter a lot. And but she did a great job. She called me, and she thought I could get the job. She thought I deserved the job. And by golly, I wanted it. And so she helped me very much. I want to thank the University of Georgia. Kirby Smart has been very good to me. We had a good run there, and I had some really good players there, good kids. And I want to thank Kirby for being so kind to Jamie and I. I want to thank my wife. She was the first six-star back in 1986. So my recruiting skills started a long time ago. We want our program to reflect the great state of Arkansas. And I'm not a big slogan guy or anything like this, but we're going to work hard. We're going to be blue collar about it. We're going to be tough. We're going to earn what we get, and we're going to go after it. Well, the traditions of the state have calling hogs. You gonna sell me a house? There's only one Razorback. Isn't it the greatest mascot of all times? I'm not going to do it. I need that. The coaching tradition with Frank Broyles and, of course, Ken Hatfield sitting here, how you going to get better than that? Can't. But I'm going to work hard. In recruiting, guys, there's a lot about recruiting. I mean, we have to recruit our own players. I think that's the first thing we need to do. We got to get in here and recruit our own players. We have to recruit our future players. We have to recruit our future coaches. And we have to recruit our alumni and our past players. We need them all back to be Arkansas strong once again. I have had my phone. Now, I don't know the number, but I have my new phone and my old phone. And I've had 500 plus messages from coaches you would be shocked, or you might not be, who want to come to the University of Arkansas. So it would be very hard for me to believe that if the coaching world wants to come to the University of Arkansas, how come we can't get the players in our state and across the nation to feel the same way? And I believe we can. Honestly, I believe we will. As your head coach, as you can tell, this means a lot, you know. I'm done. I don't deserve that. Thank you. But I want to earn your trust. The only way I know how to do it is be loyal to you, be honest with you, and go work hard. And that's what we're going to do. I'm a wreck. I did some pretty good interviews today. They were good. There's easy question about the hog and all that. I just, whoa. But I'm humble, excited to be your coach, and we'll do the best we can for you. We're not going to promise. We're going to promise. We're going to work our butt off for the University of Arkansas. We're going to get it done. Thank you so much.
You did a great job. We're going to transition over here. Folks, let's hear it again for Coach Sam Pittman. You sit right here.
Okay. This side. All right, that's it. Y'all sit down.
What have the last 24 hours? What have they been like for you and Jamie?
Hey, Robbie. Well, I cried twice. I cried whenever he offered me a job, and I just did then in front of, seemed like a lot of folks. Stupid. The last 24 hours have been awesome. They came to see us, and we got in a plane. It's a nice plane, by the way. And we flew in here. The greatest thing, I got to talk to the team. Team was so awesome. They set up, they looked at me. I hope they felt my passion towards the program. And then today was, I really don't remember about today, but I know I did a lot of photo shoots. They had me doing all kinds of stupid stuff, you know what I mean? Raw and all that, you know what I mean? I guarantee you Coach Hatfield wouldn't have done it. But by golly, Coach Pittman did.
I was going to say. Coach, I look out, I see a lot of former players. A lot of your former players had a big hand in you being here today.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Oh, they're awesome. I mean, them kids, the thing about it is they were great players, and now they're out in the community just kicking butt. I mean, they're great kids, married, babies. But when they wrote that letter to Hunter about me, it was awesome. I told Jamie at that time, if we don't ever get the job, that letter's good enough. It was awesome. It was great.
You have earned the reputation as being a great recruiter, a great relationship builder. You talked about recruiting the guys you've got and then branching out from there. Tell us a little bit about relationship building and why that's so important to you.
Well, I think it's the only way you're going to have a chance to get somebody to believe in you. If I don't know something, it's like going to class. If you go to class 50% of the time, and the teacher doesn't know who you are, you have no relationship with you, don't be shocked you get an F in the class. It's the same way with recruiting. It's the same way with building relationships. It has to be constant. It has to be honest. It has to be sincere. And you have to recruit everybody in that family. And you have to do it a lot. In any spell in that. And that's what you got to do with your own team, though. I told them last night, I said, communication or the lack thereof, communication is going to kill our program, so we're not going to have it. We're going to have plenty of it. And I wanted them to come see me and talk to me. But recruiting is the same way. Recruiting is just about getting to know each other.
You lead a football life in so many ways and have led a football life in so many ways. The last 8 years in the league, many years coaching other leagues or in other leagues prior to that, how has all that prepared you for this?
Well, I learned a lot from a lot of good coaches. Butch Davis was a good coach, and of course Kirby Smart's a good coach, and I could go on and on and on. But I think the main thing that it prepares you for is how difficult it is to recruit in the SEC and to understand what it takes, what you need player-wide, coaches-wise, to compete in the SEC. And I heard Hunter, by the way, that was I was wondering who that guy you was talking about when I was standing back there. That was awesome. I was waiting to see if it was me, and I was like, but anyway, I think that I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the coaches you've learned from and all the things that have gotten you ready for the day.
Well, and I think this, that getting these big people, getting size, getting talent, getting all those things, everybody has to have it. And I learned basically, I thought I knew how to recruit until I went to Georgia and worked with Kirby Smart, and that was recruiting on steroids. I mean, that's what it is. And it's relentless, it's all the time. So I really learned a lot from Kirby about the passion of recruiting. And I've done well recruiting in my life, but he prepared me more for this head coaching job, and I appreciate him for that.
In terms of being a head coach philosophically, people are familiar with you as an offensive line coach. What about Sam Pittman as a head coach now?
Well, again, I want to run a program that's loyal, that's disciplined, that is tough, that scores more points than they do. The thing about our players is, they hired an O-line coach, and all we want to do is score more than they do. And so if we come out here and we're in an RPO system, if we're not 3 yards in a cloud of dust, unless that's the way we got to win the game, and then we'll be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But that's not what an O-line coach is about. An O-line coach is about trying to score more points than the opponent. And so we're going to be aggressive. We're going to be tough. Fundamentals, if you hear the NFL guys right now, that's the biggest thing that's gone from the game. And it wasn't from his team. And so we're going to we're going to stress the fundamentals of the game and the toughness of the game and seeing what you block and pre-snap reads. And we're going to go back to the base fundamentals of football, and we're going to be tough. And then after that, we're going to worry about the next thing. But if we can get that done, we can win a lot of games just going that far.
And let's wrap it up by talking about what made you want to come back to Arkansas, you and Jamie. What was it about this place? What is it about this place?
I don't know. When I came here in 1979, the summer of 1979, and I was a one-star athlete out there at camp. And I thought I was going to get a scholarship to Arkansas. Lou Holtz was the coach. And I fell in love with the place. Now, my uncle had been out in his car and listening to the Razorback games on the radio. Seemed like he did it every Saturday, so the car must not have been in very good shape. But he was out there doing it. And I just fell in love with Arkansas. And then we graduated over at Grove, which is 75 miles or so from here. And most of the people in the state of Oklahoma are Oklahoma State, and I was Arkansas Razorback. And I don't know, I just always had a love for Arkansas. And then whenever we got an opportunity to come back here 7 years ago now, it seems shorter than that, but 7 years ago from now, that was one of Jamie and I's dreams. And of course, coming back now, it's whatever's better than a dream.
You want to call the Hogs as the head coach?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's stand up and do it. All right, Coach, you want to lead us? Here we go.
Yeah, I do. Ooh, pig soy. Ooh, pig soy.
Hey, Suey, Razorbacks.
You good?
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our program. We thank you for being here. Coach is going to go to the press conference. Go Hogs!
Meanwhile, did you have Sam Pittman on your bucket list to be the next Arkansas coach? I'm looking for a show of hands. A lot of going on. The Pittman conversation will certainly be one topic of conversation. They started with Lane Kiffin, Mike Norvell, and worked their way through a number of other names. Ended up with the Georgia offensive line coach, known as a great offensive line coach. Used to be at Arkansas under Brett Bielema. And maybe some people at Arkansas are trying to regain the glory days, at least of the first half of the Bielema era.
But how would you grade the hires, Paul? I mean, we've been talking a lot about Pittman. Early grade that you would give Arkansas for this?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of John Talty, as you guys know, regular guest here on the show. He's the managing editor at AL.com. I'm just going to read you his tweet from last night. Covers the SEC. John said, Arkansas badly needed a hire to move the needle, and this ain't it. Paying $10 million plus to buy out Chad Morris only to end up with Sam Pittman is a disaster.
Okay. Well, we'll put that as incomplete
John, that's
right
from
now.
John Talty. I am not literate enough to come up with something that snappy.
It is a strange hire.
It's a bizarre hire.
A week ago, this time, we were talking about Lane Kiffin.
Lane didn't want the job. It's pretty obvious.
Right. What do you think about Ole Miss getting Lane then?
Well,
I mean, what grade would you give that?
A plus.
Yeah.
They've definitely won the social media war. I mean, we're fans of Kiffin, and we're already getting Kiffin overload, right? On the every tweet about him is just kind of like, man.
Yeah, I would say the Missouri hire is very intriguing. Certainly a young guy, but if you're going to get rid of the status quo, which was Barry Odom, try something different.
Right. He's a young guy, right? App State. 1 year, though. 1 year.
Yeah, but at least he's been a head coach. He's been around some good coaches. I mean, Sam Pittman, to me, I would like to talk to Hunter Yurachek just about how did you get to him on your list, other than the fact he once worked there. Yeah. Let's welcome in Andy Staples, always a fantastic person to bring on to this program to talk coaching and everything else. Andy, it's been way too long. Thank you for joining us. And we were just deciphering the three SEC coaches. There are more than that, but let's start with the most obvious. Lane Train returning to the SEC. I know it's a sports writer's delight, but explain to those out in the hinterlands why this is so exciting.
Oh, it's great. I mean, this is the perfect guy for that job, and Lane is just going to be Lane. You know, he can try to button it up. He can say, well, I've changed, I've learned, but he just has these impulses to say and do all these things that are very interesting to us. And I asked him about it last year. I said, why do you think people are so much more interested in you than anybody else? Because I did a story when I was still working at Sports Illustrated on him, and the whole premise of the story is we picked him to do this story on because we knew you'd read it because it's about Lane. Anything about Lane sells. And he's like, I have no idea why people are so fascinated. But the reason is because he'll say some of the things that other coaches won't say. And I think he'll do that at Ole Miss. You know, there were the period he was at USC, he didn't do a lot of that because he didn't feel like you had to sell that program that hard to get good recruits, that they were already aware of it. But when he was the head coach at Tennessee, he was very out there, and, you know, whatever he needed to do to get the attention for the program, he was going to do. I guarantee he was going to do that at Ole Miss. And the fact that he really, I mean, let's be honest, that job opened because a guy pretended to pee on the field like a dog. That is the most college football thing that ever happened. And listen, as a sports writer, Lane Kiffin in Oxford is about as good as it gets.
Let's quickly go over the other two coaches here. Drinkwitz going from App State after 1 year to Missouri, replacing Barry Odom, who was very solid and very boring. But solid and Missouri seem to go together, don't they?
They do. Here's what I think has happened with Missouri. I think Gary Pinkel did too good of a job. I think people feel like Missouri should be a place where you can do what Gary Pinkel did every year, and it's not. I mean, think about before Gary Pinkel, the two things you remembered most about Missouri were bad things that happened to their team, bad luck stuff, the fifth down and the flea kicker. And then he gets there, and suddenly, they're winning their division in the Big 12, or they're winning the SEC East. And I think their fans and their administration got used to that kind of success and have forgotten how hard it really is to win at Missouri. So, Drinkwitz will take over, and the expectation will be, okay, you got to be better than the 6-6, 7-5 that we were getting from Barry Odom. But that's not that easy. And especially with Georgia being really good in the East, Florida being good, has come back up. I think Mark Stoops did a great coaching job at Kentucky this year. Those wins are not easy to come by. The good news for them is they get to play Arkansas every year.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me stop you right now on Arkansas, because that's the hire that even reasonable fans are going, please explain. And listen, you can't say he's a good offensive line coach and he's a good recruiter. We know that, and he's a loss to Kirby Smart. But why is he good for Arkansas? Sam Pittman, I mean.
Well, he's a good recruiter, and that's what they need right now. They weren't, listen, there weren't a ton of people clamoring for that job. There were a group of 5 head coaches who turned it down. And, it's hard. It's in a position where whoever gets it, and it's going to be Sam Pittman, but Pittman's going to need 4 years to dig out of that hole. And I don't know if they're willing to give it to him, because Arkansas is so flush with money, and they've got these high expectations. I don't know that they're going to be as patient as they need to be with this person. I think that scared some people off. Now, I'm a big fan of hiring the O-line coach as a head coach. I think there should be more of those. And, there's some doing pretty well right now. Mario Cristobal just won a Pac-12 at Oregon. Matt Campbell's doing a good job at Iowa State. So, it's sort of like having the drummer as your lead singer. So that's your Sam Pittman-Phil Collins comparison for the day. But I'm fine with that. I'm fine with finding a guy who's great at recruiting offensive linemen and great at developing offensive line. If you got a solid offensive line, you're going to have a higher floor than anything else. And so you're going to be okay. And Arkansas right now needs to climb back up to okay. So they hired the guy that can get him to okay. Now we'll see in terms of what he hires for staff if they can take advantage of that skill talent. But I do believe that in a few years he'll have that line where it needs to be, and he'll have the defensive line where it needs to be, because he knows what he's looking for there too. It'll be up to him to take that next step, though.
We heard from Coach Pittman being introduced, and we'll get the reaction of the public, of course. Let me get your reaction to you guys. What'd you see and hear?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to run through a wall.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure if you're serious there, Mark.
No, listen. You come off of these dynamic personalities like Lane Kiffin, and you have some other people. Different people have different strategies on coaching and press conferences and everything. And this is an offensive line coach who probably hasn't gotten a lot of press to begin with. A lot of to asking questions. So to be thrown in there in your first press conference, it's I'm sure people were looking for the dynamic, loud. Maybe that's not his style. It's not his style, but doesn't mean he's not going to win games at Arkansas. So. Paul, what were your guys' impressions?
Most fans would rather you win the games, not the press conference, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you saw was night and day here with Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman. And it doesn't mean he won't be successful. What it does mean is that in the very narrow window that he has between now and next Tuesday, he's probably not going to fire anyone up.
Right. I heard this guy, most of what I knew about Sam from reading about him once he got the job was that he was a great recruiter and a knockdown, ace recruiter, can sell anybody. So I didn't necessarily get the sales pitch from that press conference. That doesn't mean he's not giving it in homes, obviously, this next couple of weeks.
Listen, you've heard me say a couple of times I'd like to talk to him first. Hopefully maybe tomorrow we can talk to him.
Let's get him on the show,
Right.
I am reluctant to say too much based on a press conference. I mean, there's some things that I didn't understand, but I think maybe has Hunter Yurachek talked yet? I mean, I think
he spoke earlier.
He did an introductory stuff.
He did a little intro discussion on that. So.
I think you're right, though. Let's reserve judgment till we can talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes. I mean, I've heard guys like that at press conferences, and they're not talkative people, and then maybe on a one-on-one, we can break it down a little bit more. I mean, the school that had the most time. They let go of Chad Morris many weeks ago. They had 6 to 8 weeks to get ready, and it seemed like they went through a number of names before they landed on Sam Pittman, who has a tremendous reputation as an offensive line coach. He's been a tremendous recruiter, but no experience as a head coach, and I'm not even sure he's got experience as a coordinator, does he?
Not that I'm aware of, Paul. I think it's definitely a hire that people will look from the outside in as being very risky. He does have some Arkansas ties. He was there with Brett Bielema as his offensive line coach, and at the time, their offensive line was really probably the best it's been in a long time, is when they were able to really run the ball and be a very physical presence in some of these SEC games. As you know as well as I do, Paul, you can be a great recruiter, which Sam Pittman, he was the reason this Georgia offensive line looks like it looks, and you have all these draft picks everywhere. So let's be clear with that. He was basically the sole reason for that.
How big a loss is it to Georgia?
What's that?
How big a loss is it to Kirby?
I think it's a huge loss. I think when you take that loss back-to-back with Chaney 1 year, and Sam Pittman the next, it's an enormous loss. And we already know the struggles that they had really the entire year on offense. I think it's a huge hit for Georgia.
So, I mean, we're talking about Arkansas, but it cuts both ways. It hurts them. We to be determined how much it helps Arkansas, but it will easily go down as the strangest hire of the coaching carousel season.
A lot of question marks are going to be around it. And again, look, we may be talking 3 years from now and say this was, the biggest genius hire in 10 years. But again, it's a pretty tough jungle to operate in, Paul, and it's surprising that they would hire somebody that hasn't been a coordinator and hasn't had any head coaching experience, which doesn't equate to it being a bad hire. It just, as you put it, it's a mystery.
Georgia has a new offensive lineman coach. Sam Pittman's gone, and Matt Luke is in. Pretty good replacement. One of the better line coaches around. Matt Luke was the Ole Miss head coach. Now he works for Kirby Smart. And breaking news, Chad Morris, formerly of Arkansas, is now at Auburn. This had been expected. He's not the head coach, of course. He is the offensive coordinator. He's a longtime friend of Gus Malzahn, and it will be interesting to see what Chad is able to do down on the Plains. Well, we still have not had Sam Pittman on. We are hoping to get him as soon as he comes in from the cold, or otherwise known as the recruiting trail. But we have somebody just as interesting, Josh Bertaccini. He hosts the #1 sports call-in show in Northwest Arkansas. He is the voice of Arkansas, and he joins us now. JB, great to have you on. Before we get into how Pittman has been received, can you tell us what transpired over the last couple of weeks with Hunter Yurachek after dumping Chad Morris, especially his process, because from a distance it seemed rather convoluted?
Yeah, absolutely. And great to be on with you, Paul, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners. And yeah, I think here we're grateful it's over. That's for sure. The search that you just brought up for Sam Pittman that took, can you believe, 4 weeks for Arkansas to find itself a head coach? And you asked me for what went on with Hunter Yurachek behind the scenes. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to you, the last time we talked a couple of weeks ago, all signs were pointing elsewhere. And so, did Arkansas end up getting the #1, #2, top 5 kind of candidate on their board? I don't think they got the top guy or two, but they certainly got somebody who wanted the job. And truthfully, this is a tough job right now, as you well know, and a job that is not in high demand for big-time coaches. So they probably didn't get their first or second choice, but they definitely got the guy who wanted the job more than anybody else.
Well, that's great. Who wouldn't want a $4 million a year job? But, JB, tell me this. Who did they target and what happened?
You and I went over some figures, some names. I think you're onto it as much as anybody, Paul. I think, Arkansas was interested in a guy like Lane Kiffin, who I thought, represented really well on your show, talking about his interest in Mississippi and a chance at the SEC again. And there's still some talk around here right now about what exactly went on behind the scenes. I heard a caller on your show just a little while ago, I think is privy to the same information I am, that Arkansas was deeply interested in Lane Kiffin and went pretty hard after him. And then, as you said yourself a few minutes ago, Paul, I'm hearing the same thing, that things didn't go much beyond that once we got into the middle of last week, it was very evident that Lane was not interested in Arkansas. And so what did that mean? That meant the Hogs were scrambling. And what they did was they went out and got a couple coaches some good raises. Matt Campbell at Iowa State, Mike Leach at Washington State. Both guys interviewed with Arkansas. Both guys got more money to stay put. And Arkansas ended up going after Sam Pittman, who, as you well know, was already an offensive line coach here for 3 years under Brett Bielema.
So they get Sam Pittman. We watched his news conference the other day. JB, I know you were there. I really didn't know what to make out of it through the lenses of television. Tell us what it was like inside that room.
It was interesting, Paul, and I've been to way more of these than I'd probably care to remember in the last few years with Razorback football. In fact, I was thinking about that the other day. 5 times now in the last decade I've been there where, a head hog was introduced and they spoke about how hopefully he'd be there forever. So, I mean, we've had this happen too often, and they've been stuck in a rut for all the reasons that you and I have discussed before. I thought Sam Pittman came in and, truthfully, he looked like a guy who was grateful for the opportunity to be a head coach finally. I thought you saw genuine emotion and enthusiasm. You saw some tears of happiness that I thought were real, and I thought that was a good moment. The folks in the room clearly on his side. Paul, he's got family throughout this area. He is one of those guys, folks in Arkansas, I mean, he's from Oklahoma originally, but folks in Arkansas would call Pittman a Razorback through and through. And if you look at what happened with him under Brett Bielema, a guy who tried to play, bully ball, big guy football at the line of scrimmage, and then when Sam Pittman left and went to Georgia and joined Kirby Smart, you saw how Georgia just descended on the offensive line, and Arkansas has been a disaster ever since. So Pittman pointed to that. He pointed to his recruiting. He pointed to wanting the job. I thought he looked a little bit tired, like a guy who'd probably been in a whirlwind for the last day or two, like he admitted he was. But, did he win the room? It's pretty hard not to on a day where folks are feeling more relief than anything. Clearly, though, and I'm sure we'll get into it here for a second or two, Paul, a lot of questions around Sam Pittman's hiring right now.
What are the biggest questions other than he has no experience as a coordinator or head coach?
Well, there you go. I mean, you're Paul Feinbaum for a reason. You know what you're talking about. This guy has no experience as a head coach in Power One Division, Division One Power 5 football. He hadn't been a head coach since Hutchinson Community College in Western Kansas, which, let's be real, is a quality JUCO kind of program. But that was 25 years ago. I've had folks this week on our morning show that you were kind enough to bring up, Paul, mention how they think he was a great high school coach in the early 1990s. It's almost, we're talking 30 years ago. Let's get real here. He doesn't have that experience. So what happens in games when he's got to make decisions with everything on the line and he's learning on the fly, and he's not learning on the fly for a program that has any kind of margin for error? Because, as you know, Arkansas has gone 7-29 in the last 3 years. So it's been a rough go of it. The inexperience is a concern with him. I think you wonder about his ability to put his staff together. We're going to find out more and more by the day here what happens in that regard. He hired Brad Davis and gave Arkansas fans at least a glimpse into what he's going to do on the offensive line by getting Missouri's OL coach to join him just yesterday, but nothing else yet. We don't know who the offensive coordinator is or the defensive coordinator. And for a guy who has no experience, as you point out, he's going to have to make home run hires on that staff to lift himself up and give himself a chance.
I mean, I just listen, without having talked to him personally, I don't know much about him. I don't want to prejudge from the press conference, but JB, you were at Chad Morris's, and just because he won the press conference, he obviously didn't win anything else. Bielema was a real personality. We both know that. Petrino was not much of a personality, but he was a great coach. I mean, I'm not saying I'm troubled by it, but it just seemed rather lethargic.
It's a fair word. I've heard some folks around here say he was, fatigued, kind of came across like he was a little bit in a daze. And again, I think he was. I think Sam Pittman's got to come on your show, Paul. I mean, that's a spot he needs to be on. He needs to politic for Razorback football, and he's going to do that way better, of course, than a guy like me even should try to do here. But I have the same concerns you do. I mean, you and I are on the same page here. And I think at the end of the day, if you're going to look at this in the right context, you have to be 100% real, and Hawk fans are going to kill me for saying this, but it's the truth. You have to be 100% real about the fact that you are not a sexy job right now. You're a job that has destroyed careers, and I was talking with our mutual friend Dale Daniels about this just the other day. There's almost no track record of coaches who've come to Arkansas and used this as a springboard to better things in their careers. So that kind of rumor of Coach Killer you that you hate to see is hanging out there right now. I don't truthfully know who else they could have gotten. So you can question the hire, and I think you're right to do it.
Well, JB, hold on a second. I mean, Mike Leach's name came up. What happened to that?
I don't know.
I mean, seems like, had Leach been hired, that was a pretty dynamic hire compared to Sam Pittman. Don't you agree?
I think Leach would have been exciting. I think Lane Kiffin, who I talked, excitedly about on your show a couple of weeks ago, I think he would have been a good fit. I think Hunter Yurachek wanted a guy like that, but at the end of the day, look, they just couldn't get him. And Arkansas is paying two coaches not to coach here right now. I know Chad Morris just joined forces with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, but that's not going to cover his $4 million a year buyout. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, Paul. I wish I could paint it prettier than that, but that's where they're at right now, and they just have to hope that Sam Pittman turns out to be, I keep hearing the next Ed Orgeron. We'll see about that one.
Josh, how did they get to Pittman? Because, listen, if the two of us were in charge of the Arkansas coaching search and we get turned down by Leach or Lane or Norvell, who was nowhere near the job, I doubt we would have gone to Georgia to find the offensive line coach. What led Hunter Yurachek to there, other than the fact that he worked at Arkansas, which is the only commonality I can come up with?
It's a great question. And I try to think back to the Chad Morris hire and how Mike Norvell, by all accounts, really wanted the job a couple of years ago. And, of course, he hadn't had that incredible back-to-back seasons he's just had at Memphis. But whatever happened there, they rubbed each other the wrong way. He was not interested, like you said, this time around. And with Florida State calling, why would you be? So he wasn't there. The Gus Malzahn thing has just been star-crossed. It's never happened. He wins just enough that the folks at Auburn, put up with him, and he puts up with them. He's making $7 million a year. I would too. So that hasn't happened, even though you would think it makes sense. You brought up Leach. I brought up Campbell's extension. He didn't want the job. Paul, I don't know who wants the job right now. Sam Pittman has family here. He enjoyed his time here. He appreciates Northwest Arkansas. It's a nice place to live. I think they did the best they could, given they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. But you don't need me to tell you how to do your show. I think you're asking a lot of great questions right now about Hunter Yurachek and his search that I unfortunately cannot answer for you firsthand.
Okay, let's forget all these questions and let's try to weed out the fans who would be supportive of anyone, for that matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Sam Pittman or son of Sam. What has been the reaction on your show the last two mornings?
We got a good audience in the mornings. The people are constructive so far, I think, in their dialogue. There's a couple different political camps. You're going to get the rabid diehards, the 25, 30,000 folks who are still going to the games at the end of the year, and they're all telling you it's the greatest hire since sliced bread, which, frankly, for the reasons you laid out, doesn't even make sense to me right now. Down the road, who knows what happens, but right now I don't see how you can feel so confident in that statement. But, man, they're passionate, and so they're ready for this thing to just move on. They're going to get destroyed in recruiting, Paul. Sam Pittman said that at the press conference you brought up. They have no chance of putting together a high-level recruiting class, let alone a decent one right now. So I think folks they're just hoping he can pull some rabbits out of a hat, get through it, take their losses this year, and then hopefully hire some good coordinators. That's what we're all waiting for right now. Can you hire a big-time offensive coordinator to give an identity to your offense? Can you bring in anybody better than John Chavis, who ended up at Tulane today? What a disaster. He was here for 2 years. There's some talk, Paul, that Barry Odom and Sam Pittman are really good friends, and I don't know if that's a move Barry Odom wants to make, but what an upgrade that would be if they could get him on defense. So I think folks are trying to be optimistic, and then guys like me are skeptical, because guys like me and you, Paul, this is what we're paid to do, and he's going to have to show me that he can make some magic happen. But, hey, it's better for me if he does, right? So I'm hoping he does.
Thank you, Josh. JB, great to have you on. Hopefully you'll be back soon. Good deal. We will talk to you next week, I hope.
Always appreciate your honesty, Paul. Thank you, sir.
And by the way, I do remember Pittman, I think, saying that he initiated the contact at his press conference a couple of days ago. Anyway, maybe he did. We have been really looking forward to this conversation for a couple of days now since Sam Pittman was named as the head coach of the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, coming to Arkansas from Georgia. Coach Pittman joining us now from Fayetteville. Coach, congratulations, and thank you very much for being here.
Well, Paul, I really appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
Listen, we've been talking for days about how surprised the public was when they heard that you had been named. I'm guessing at some point you were pretty surprised to get in the middle of it as well.
Yes, I was. You know, I was surprised and very grateful and very happy to have the opportunity. But yeah, it all happened pretty fast, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I mean this with the utmost respect. But how did you first come to the conclusion or come to the realization that you were in the mix?
Well, it would have been sometime Sunday morning, and I got a call, and I called my wife, and I said, hey, you know, I think we're going to have a shot here. And, of course, obviously we're very excited. And then throughout the day, it just started happening a little bit.
What do you think it says, Coach? Because, I mean, you have you've been a great position coach, and your reputation in Georgia and really as a recruiter is superb.
Thank you.
But a lot of guys never get that opportunity, and you know that because you've been one of those guys. So what do you think it says to so many of your colleagues out there in the country that you finally have landed one of the plum jobs in the SEC and around the country?
Well, I think it gives guys like myself hope. You know, I don't know how many guys could have this opportunity, and so I think it just says that there's hope out there. Just keep trying to do good at the job that you're currently in, and you know, obviously you have to recruit or you're not going to have a chance to get one of these jobs.
And certainly, do you think your reputation, I mean, listen, your reputation as a line coach and recruiter really mattered, but especially as a recruiter, because I've talked to people, I know you've gotten some big-time players. I remember the young man out of Alabama that came over not long ago, other players as well, that some people wondered, like, it took a personal relationship to make that for the player to make that decision.
Well, it does, and, you know, I mean, you have to recruit the kid, the mom, the coach, sometimes here at the University of Arkansas, the state. So, but it's just time. I know everybody works very hard and all that, but in order to really sign an elite player, you have to make it so hard on him that he doesn't feel like he can tell you no.
Do you think also, Coach, having familiarity with that program under Coach Bielema was a tremendous asset to you? Because, you know, sometimes you walk into a place you've never been. It is far more difficult than one that you have already lived in and done.
Well, I certainly think it had a lot to do with it, Paul. And, you know, my wife and I had already bought a lot on the lake down in Hot Springs, so this was kind of home coming back. And with us already being here in Fayetteville and knowing the culture of the state of Arkansas and the fans, I think they had a whole lot to do with it.
Coach, I know things are crazy. I mean, recruiting is coming to an end and signing day is around the corner, and it's been hard to have a lot of time to breathe, but there's been some speculation out there that you might bring in Barry Odom, the highly respected coach from Missouri. Can you comment on that?
Well, I can tell you this, that I'm ecstatic that he's in his car headed down to Fayetteville as we speak. Yes, I'm ecstatic. Really, you know, Paul, I felt like I needed a guy on my staff that had been a head coach, and one that I could lean on and talk to. And there's really not a better person out there and a finer coach, finer man than Barry Odom. And I'm just blessed he's in his car coming down here.
I know this. My job is supposed to interview you and not give commentary as we're talking, but I have to tell you, Coach, knowing Barry Odom, that's one of the smartest things I have heard from a coach in a long time, because he does. I mean, forget his defensive prowess. We all know how good he is, but his experience, I cannot imagine I can only imagine would be of great service to you.
There's no doubt. And when I interviewed Paul, I said, I think I can put together an outstanding staff, but I want on that staff some people that's had head coaching experience. And if I could get Barry, who's been a head coach in the Southeastern Conference, I just thought it'd be so much help to me, and I'm sure that it will.
I know the job now is to recruit and to put a staff together, but I heard you say something the other day, and I really wasn't moved by it, but the genuine excitement. A lot of times you get to a certain state in life, and most of the people that aren't of a certain age can interpret that any way they want. But I mean, you don't get these opportunities. But you seem genuinely just ecstatic to be where you are right now.
I really believe that Arkansas is the greatest job in the country, and I do. And it's a different type job because the state of Arkansas are different people. We're the only show in the state. There is Arkansas State, excuse me, but we're the only SEC school in the state. There's no pro teams here. The state of Arkansas loves the Hogs, and it's a very special place. And when I was a kid, Paul, I grew up about 75 miles from here, and I was a Hog fan back then, and just really never have lost the love for the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Well, the questions will come fast and furious about turning this program around. And listen, we all know the record. There's no reason to harp on that. But how do you do it? How do you make this program viable again?
Well, I think it's just hard work. I told them in my interview, I think we have to recruit our way out of this thing, and I think we can. We have very fine facilities here and a great administration, so there's really not a reason why Arkansas can't get back to the glory days. We needed to have the money to hire assistant coaches. They gave it to me. And we needed to have the support of the administration and the chancellor, and we had that too. But the facilities are here. We just have to get kids on campus, and I think we can certainly help ourselves once we get them on campus, because there's not a lot of people that know what we truly have here at the university.
And I will say that as someone who's been there a lot of times, I mean, that is a unique place. It's a special place. It's a beautiful place, too.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is. And they, I think they just recently put in $7.5 million in the end zone for a new locker room for game day and things of that nature. So the money's here, the commitment's here. We just have to get the players here.
And when you've already been out there, and when you're talking to players, I know you've gotten some good results already, but sales pitch is overdone. I mean, you seem like a guy that just looks somebody in the eye and say, "Listen."
That's right.
How do you recruit?
Well, the same way that I received the opportunity to be the head coach at Arkansas, there's opportunity here. We're not deep on our roster, even though we have 14 starters coming back and those things, but there's great opportunity, and everybody wants to play early in their career. And with that said, I do believe that we have and will continue to get some of the best assistant coaches in the country. So you have assistant coaches who are going to love and care, mentor these kids, and then, of course, you have the opportunity to get on the field early.
Coach, it's somewhat of a loaded question to ask about expectations, and a lot of coaches hate that. But I am interested in as you look ahead to what this program is capable of in terms of success. What is it?
Wow, that was a good question, Paul. I think that I know we can win here. I know it's going to take some time,
and we understand that. The state understands, the administration understands that. But I think as long as we show improvement and show that we are a physical, tough, relentless type football team, we're well coached, I think we can win football games. You know, when I came in here with Brett, we were 3-9, and then we went 7-6. Then they went 8-5, and they were kind of headed in the direction of where the Razorback Nation wanted them to be, and then it fell off again. But I think we can stride and get to that point again. And how long it takes, I don't know. But obviously, I would not have taken this job if I didn't believe that we could win here. Even though obviously the pay salary was different and all those things, I wanted to win, and I believe that I was the guy that they could hire to win for the Razorbacks.
We got your reaction as we and by the way, we're gonna go into our treasury here at the SEC Network and buy you one of those earpieces that fit.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. It keeps popping out.
No, listen,
Paul, I put it as far down in my ears.
Don't lose it. Whatever you do, Coach. We talked about your reaction. I'm really interested in your family's reaction to when this was made official.
Oh, it was awesome. You know, my wife and I went into the bedroom. We called her mother and father and my brother, my 3 sisters, and asked them if they knew how to call them hogs and all that kind of stuff. It was just awesome. And then yesterday on the recruiting trail, I got an opportunity to tell my dad I was the head coach at Arkansas, and it was awesome. It was just awesome. It hadn't been a job for 5 days. It's been the greatest 5 days of my coaching life.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know you. I know of your reputation, and like a lot of people, we all shook our head when we heard the news. But
That's right.
I'm not shaking anymore.
Thank you.
Really impressed with what you've had to say here, and the Coach Odom hire too. Coach, come back soon. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for being good to me. You've always been good to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Wow. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to expect, but I liked what I saw there. That was very impressive. And again, if you missed the beginning of the conversation, he did confirm that Barry Odom is in his car right now driving to Arkansas to become the new defensive coordinator. That's a big story. So this is what Coach has to deal with next year. At Notre Dame, second game of the year, that's always a good one to get an indoctrination into big-time college football. Alabama, Tennessee, the crossover.
Alabama, LSU in back-to-back weeks.
That's easy.
Welcome to the SEC West.
How about Barry Odom going back to Missouri on the 28th?
That's cool.
I like that.
That's
wait,
cool.
No. That game's going to be in Kansas City.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
You're right. I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Barry Odom going to Kansas City.
yeah, exactly.
All right, Paul, so impressions.
Listen, can't help but like the guy. I mean, when he said after getting the job, he took his wife into the bedroom, he got my attention.
right, yeah. We didn't know where it was going at that point for sure.
I like it. First time we've heard from Coach, besides the press conference, and, you know, he's out recruiting, he's out doing his stuff, and like you said, you got to build. You got to continue to build to get Razorback football back where it always where it was.
Chad Morris won the press conference. He was slick. He sold everybody a bill of goods, and you know what? The check bounced.
Yeah, most explosive offense in the country never really materialized.
I got ties to Texas. I'm gonna go recruit those boys down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I thought Coach Pittman. He wrested his son away from Dabo's clutches, but yeah, I thought Coach Pittman was pretty realistic. It seemed like about what the challenge is there, and that maybe the best pitch he has to some of these athletes is playing time and the availability to get on the field in a thin roster. But hey, that you can start there and build something from that for sure if you coach them up, right?
Yeah, I mean, Paul, the big thing about Arkansas, right? You want to take all the kids from the state and make sure they go to Arkansas. Do you start something like that?
Well, there's not enough players to matter. But you have, and maybe because I'm from the South and grew up on the Arkansas border, not that border, but you just have to be relatable, and this guy was relatable. He wasn't a snake oil salesman. He was just down home. 1,000 country songs have been written about guys like Coach.
It is my pleasure to announce the 2019 winner and 85th recipient of the Heisman Memorial Trophy is Joe Burrow. Louisiana State University, congratulations. LSU.
So Arkansas has had some ups and downs. I'm going to be interested to see if Bobby Petrino on a motorcycle makes the Mount Rushmore.
It's so close.
I think we just left him off, Paul.
I mean, it's a Mount Rushmore of all-time college football pictures, that's for sure. But if we look at what Arkansas has done in the last 10 years, I mean, they had 2 10-win seasons, 14 wins versus AP-ranked teams.
How many 10-loss seasons?
2.
I think that was 6. 3 bowl wins. They won the Cotton Bowl. I mean, the early part of this decade, Paul, for Arkansas started out really well.
My favorite coach, John Smith.
John L. gave some of the best press conferences.
He was a character.
Yeah.
His name's my name, too.
You know, but Paul, honestly, we think about the decade, it's going to be that Bielema project that didn't work. You know, when he came over from Wisconsin, I think everybody thought the same thing. Like, wow, this is the one moment, because it seemed like a lateral move. Wisconsin, Arkansas, okay, let's see what he can do. He can bring these people in.
I don't think I've ever seen a team have such a weird decade than, like you said, the front of the Arkansas decade. People forget in 2011.
Yeah, they were
1, 2, and 3
State.
was LSU, Alabama, Arkansas.
Right.
To start the decade
Bobby
in 2011.
Petrino, 11 or 12, I can't remember, somewhere between 8 and 12. I did a ranking of SEC coaches. I used to do it every year. He was number 2 in the SEC.
Yeah. He had that program rolling, and then after that, and John L. Smith, and then the Bielema project didn't work out the way, and then, so it's just...
You can't even say Chad Morris, can you?
No.
Not without giggling. We do have a Mount Rushmore, though, because they did have some really good players that came through. Ryan Mallett.
Oh, yeah.
Alex Collins.
Trey Flowers.
Brandon Allen. I mean, again, this was a program that, you looked at.
By the way, that Mount Rushmore is not going to win the Mount Rushmores.
No.
Yeah, it won't.
No, but it's good.
I wish you'd put Brett Bielema up there.
You thought about it.
We welcome you back, David Basil, the former captain of the Arkansas Razorbacks, talk show host, TV personality, and also the founder of the Broyles Award. David, always great to have you on. And before we even get into serious conversation, I want to talk about the Broyles Award, because it just was handed out to maybe the youngest winner ever. Good afternoon, David.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up. I've been listening to the show for the last 30 minutes. And I started the Broyles Award 24 years ago, back in 1996. And I don't think I've ever seen a story like I've seen with Joe Brady, the winner for this year. And, you take an offense, Paul, last year that was ranked 70th in total offense, a quarterback that was ranked probably middle of the pack, 16 touchdowns total last year, 5 interceptions. That same quarterback, those same receivers, that same offensive line went from 70th to the number 1 total offense in America. And so you got to give Coach O credit for hiring Joe Brady and Steve Ensminger for allowing that young man to come in. You're right, at age 30, the youngest to ever win the Broyles Award. But let me tell you what, they would not be achieving what they achieved this year without Joe Brady. And he's so humble, Paul. He was great here in Little Rock. Deflects the credit. But there's no question. I've never seen anything like that, the impact of an assistant coach in 1 year to take an offense that was just an average offense to be the most explosive we've seen in SEC history. It was really impressive.
Give us some behind the scenes of being around him, because, he has not been heard from very often. We've seen a lot of him.
Yeah, he's extremely humble, extremely deflective. I was with him at the ESPN Home Depot College Football Award Show. He sits on the back row, just sits back there, applauds for all of his guys, the receivers who he coaches, and Coach Joe, of course, Joe Burrow. And a very humble guy. He calls himself an assistant. He was an assistant to an assistant at New Orleans. It's really a remarkable story, Paul. A guy that just sort of been on the radar, but came in and impressed Steve Ensminger at a chalk talk session with about 20 LSU coaches. Ensminger tells Orgeron about him. Orgeron brings him back in, and you got to give him credit. This guy was again, had been at with Joe Moorhead at Penn State. Came from William and Mary, was not a flashy guy, but they saw something in him, and he was able to connect with his players. And you're right, he's not a flashy guy, but I've been around a lot of good ones, Paul, at the Broyles Award. Lincoln Riley, he sort of reminds me of Lincoln Riley, a guy very confident, even though he's young, knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing, and he can connect. And boy, what a result it's been this year for LSU.
David Basil with us. David, I know what the reaction has become, but the first time you heard that Sam Pittman was being named the head coach at Arkansas, what was your reaction?
Well, by that time, Paul, I think that the trickle-down effect, you'd heard that Norvell was not an option anymore, and then, of course, you heard that, that weekend that Kiffin was going to Ole Miss and that Drinkwitz was going to Missouri. There had been a push by a lot of former players about Sam Pittman, and I remember talking on our radio show that, you know what, fine. I'm okay with Pittman because he's a dynamic recruiter. His players love him. A reference to the Broyles Award, one of the great assistant coaches, Paul, for Frank Broyles was Wilson Matthews. And the players just loved him, and they played hard for him. And that's been the M.O. for Sam Pittman. It was at Arkansas. Players just would run through a brick wall, and he was a dynamic recruiter at Georgia. So I remember early on when somebody brought up his name, I was like, fine. If you look at where this program went down the tubes, it's when he left Brett Bielema after that 8-5 season, and the offensive line has never been the same. So I'm fine with it. He's a guy that I didn't know, Paul, at the time, that had grown up in Oklahoma right on the border and had gone to Lou Holtz's football camps as a junior high and high schooler, and was sort of raised watching the Razorbacks, and that he had property in Hot Springs. And I think it's much like the hiring of Eric Musselman. This is a guy who wanted the job, Paul, and I think if Razorback fans have embraced him, it may not have been number one, but who cares at this point? Let's get tough. Let's get tougher, a tougher football team, and let's get some better talent in.
I don't mean this disrespectfully to everything you've said, but that's all great. Can he win big?
Well, that's a good question. I have no clue. I don't think anybody knows for sure. But if you think about it, Paul, the Chad Morris hire, he was a head coach at SMU. What did that turn out? Didn't give you any indicator. So I don't know. It's so funny. I asked Mark May a few weeks ago, who was the Outland Trophy winner. I said, Mark, how many guys that have been successful that have gone from offensive line coaches to head coaches? And he took about 2 seconds. He said, my coach, Joe Gibbs. And then, of course, Vince Lombardi was an offensive line coach. So I don't know, Paul. There is no magic formula. All I know is that this guy, you've seen the kind of players he's recruited, and, boy, they have been just deficient at talent in both offensive and defensive lines, and hopefully Barry Odom will help address that on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Listen, it just seems like deja vu, and I happen to like Pittman. Morris, I never really knew what to say about Morris. Did you?
No, again, on paper, again, SMU, it just wasn't an impressive number. It wasn't an impressive resume. It was okay. If you remember at that point, Jeff Long had been fired, Paul, at the time, and you had some interim folks in there involved with the hiring. And, again, I like Chad Morris, but obviously it was not a fit. And I'll tell you, Paul, I've gone to 90 straight Razorback fans for 90 strate Razorback games, rather, for the radio station, TV station I work for. And it's been
by the way, my deepest condolences.
Yes, it's been the most brutal time. I feel so sorry for Razorback fans. It's been brutal, and they're just hungry for a winner. And as your caller earlier said, Paul, it was 8 years ago, Paul, 8 years ago that the Razorbacks finished the 2011 season as the number 5 ranked team in America with an 11-2 record. And so it can be done. Will it work under, Sam Pittman? I don't know, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Again, he wanted the job. Nobody else wanted it. So let's go after those guys who didn't want it. Let's kick their rear ends.
So listen, this is just so unique. A guy gets a job in the SEC. Why? Because he wanted it. That's a new one.
That's exactly. Well, you know what? That's the nature of where we are, Paul. And listen, I have no problem. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. But I will tell you this: if you've watched Sam Pittman's offensive line play at Georgia and at Arkansas, they're big, they're strong, they compete, they fight, and the fight is what we've been missing at Arkansas, Paul. The fight. As a former player and team captain, I want to see some fight out there. I want to see you busting your rear end to the whistle blows. And we sort of missed that. We just haven't seen that. So I'm willing to give the guy a chance, and let's see what happens. And as you know, this is a league where it's about talent. You got to get talent. And, boy, Arkansas has had a little bit of talent, but not near enough to compete in this league.
Not to go backwards, but Hunter Yurachek had plenty of time to make this hire. Was it just, frankly, that the program had grown so weary that it was not going to attract any of the coaches the school was interested in?
Could be. Yeah, certainly could be. You know, if you look at, say, if you evaluated Kiffin, Ole Miss versus Arkansas, Paul, the recruiting base in Mississippi is stronger than Arkansas. It just is. Texas is stronger than Arkansas. Louisiana is stronger than Arkansas. But, you know, I played for Lou Holtz and Ken Hatfield, and others have played for Houston Nutt and Bobby Petrino. Again, you can win here. It just takes the right now. Can you win consistently? Can you win double-digit every year? Probably not. But you certainly can go to Atlanta. You did that twice under Houston Nutt. You did it under Danny Ford. You knocked on the door with Petrino. But, yeah, Paul, listen, think about this, Paul. Arkansas Razorbacks are 4-20 in the last 2 years. 4-20. And so, yeah, I can understand why a lot of coaches go, man, I don't want to go there. I don't know if I can dig our way out of there. And that's why maybe some coaches, even in that Chad Morris hunt, decided to say, I don't want to take a chance because I don't know if I can get the kids there to win. So I think that's why the fans are embracing a guy that goes, yeah, I believe we can win. And so, yeah, back to your point, yeah, probably where the program is at this point.
What about Chad Morris going to Auburn? What do you make out of that decision?
Well, I know that Gus and Chad have been friends for a long, long time. I get it. It's a good hire for Gus, I think. You know, obviously he did a great job. He was a Broyles Award nominee when he was at Clemson. Yeah, I think Gus is still going to call the shots there. But, you know, Chad Morris, again, you know, sometimes, Paul, some coaches are better assistant coaches than they are head coaches. There are sometimes circumstances, maybe it's not the right timing. It wasn't for Chad Morris. And you know, I think he'll be a positive for Gus from a recruiting standpoint as well. Should be interesting for that Arkansas-Auburn game this year. I'll say that much.
And it was made official today. We talked about it briefly. That Barry Odom is coming in. He was, you know, a lot of people thought he probably should have survived at Missouri, but he didn't. He's now there, and it just seems like when we spoke to Pittman the other day that he is going to lean on Barry Odom quite a bit.
Well, I heard him reference that. That was a good interview with you, Paul. Of course, he was 1 year at Missouri under Gary Pinkel, 2015. Did a great job at Memphis. And one of the things I remember, Paul, as an old defensive player, his defenses had great technique. They were very disciplined. And a lot of times they played above. They didn't have the 5 stars. They didn't have the highest-ranked players, but they outplayed the teams they played. So I think he'll do a really good job, and plus he knows the SEC. I think there's some value in being a head coach in the SEC. But Sam Pittman, does he need it? I don't know. He certainly, you know, he's coached in national championship games. Can't hurt to have a guy who's been down the road as a head coach in the SEC, though.
You know, finally, David, I thought for a second, and I didn't want to make too much out of this, but I thought they were going to come after you.
Well, let me tell you what, I could coach up some linebackers. I can tell you that much, Paul. And listen, all I know is after 2 consecutive 2-10 seasons, I'm ready to see some winning. I think a lot of people are. So we're hoping the best for Sam Pittman, that he's hit the ground running. You know, at this point, I don't really care if people don't like the hire. This is who the guy is, and I think this Razorback fan base appreciates the fact that, as you said, a lot of the coaches may have passed on it. Not Sam Pittman. He wanted the job just like Ed Orgeron wanted the LSU job, and we'll see what happens.
David, I was really touched. I mean, in the conversation that we had with him, and I know everyone's talked to him by now. He seemed down home and perfect for Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, I think you're right, but you know, behind that smile and behind that feel good and is a tough offensive line coach, Paul.
Right.
You don't forget that. And that's what we have not seen on the Hill in a while, a team that'll get nasty with you and will fight, will punch you in the mouth and fight for 4 quarters. And even though he's a nice guy and he's very happy to get that job, the bottom line, when you step on that field for him, you better bring it every day.
I'm ready to go. I still got some eligibility left.
I bet you do. I bet you do, Paul.
That'd be great. Hey, listen, David, Merry Christmas. Thanks for coming on. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
I swear Arkansas needs to hire David Basil. I mean, with that attitude, can you imagine Pittman taking David Basil into homes. I mean, this guy would have players running through the wall. So let's talk about David Basil. It's kind of weird. We're talking about the SEC here, but Basil basically said the guy wanted the job. We like him. He's tough. His offensive linemen will get nasty and fight you.
I think it has a chance to be Bielema-esque in the sense that maybe he can do some of the things that Bielema couldn't do, because I think they're going to come back to that ground and pound, I think, philosophy.
But is that where the action is right now in the SEC?
No. But
you spent 2 years trying to get away from it, recruiting players, and now you're going to basically throw all that away and start over again to something that didn't work in the first place.
That's the tough part.
Yes. You're right. Changing philosophies.
But he did want the job.
Well, I mean, Paul, did you know anybody who turned the job down? Right. So let's look at some of the great moments that Arkansas has had this decade, because they want to get back to these moments, these
signature moments.
This is Arkansas being a top 5 LSU team.
2010.
They're capable of doing this.
And then you come back, a couple years later, go to the Cotton Bowl.
They beat Kansas State.
They were in Jerry's house, inside of Jerry's house.
Right. And then the borderline erotic win versus Texas in a bowl game.
Was Texas back before that or no?
This is one of the times Texas was back this decade.
By the way, can we stop talking about beating Texas is really mattering?
No, but all these, this is a win against TCU. All these are good, but it's still the best moment, one of the top 5 moments in the SEC this decade, this moment right here.
Allen gets the snap. He's going to fire to the sideline. Henry caught at the 25, but he's tackled. That flips it back up in the air. Picked up by Collins. Alex has got room. Can the Rebels get him on the ground? He's going to have the first down. This game's still alive. Arkansas going for 2. He's going to keep the football into the end zone. Arkansas wins. The Razorbacks win on an epic day.
That was pretty cool. That was one of the greatest plays ever.
Is there a bigger, more important play this decade for the SEC?
Outside of the Iron Bowl, that's the best play I've ever seen.
That affected the Alabama championship in 2015, right? Because Bama doesn't get into the SEC championship game if Ole Miss wins a division. We don't get Bama as a title champion. Like that's a huge play for the SEC this decade.
See, Brett Bielema did some good things there.
He did. Yeah. He beat Florida one year. I remember being at the game.
Yeah.
New coaches stepping into new shoes. Arkansas, Missouri, Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin comes into Ole Miss inheriting the number 40 class at Ole Miss, the highest rated of the 3 new head coaches. When you look at Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri and Sam Pittman at Arkansas, but that's a number just 11th in the SEC. And as for the Razorbacks, they've only got 6 commitments right now. That is the fewest of any Power 5 school. Just 6. Hobbs.
I mean, any answers for that? Huh?
It's not good. Biggest challenge these coaches have faced, though, since stepping into these. This is where the early signing period does not help you, right? You don't have that extra 6 or 7 weeks to formulate your class.
Well, Sam Pittman has a reputation of being an outstanding recruiter, and thank goodness, right? But I think you're right. I think if I'm a new coach hired 2 weeks before the early signing period, I'm hiring Bill Walton as my recruiting coordinator because I want him to go in every room and just chill out, dude. What's the rush? Let's think things over. Let's take our time because basically you go from trying to sign players to get them to rethink what they're about to do. If you're a new hire, you're Sam Pittman, you're Lane Kiffin, you're Drinkwitz, you want to try and push this to February as much as you can to build up this class. And nobody has more work to do than Arkansas. Now, he did have a big weekend last week. Had 5 players on campus. I think 5 they had a good shot at because Arkansas at the beginning of October, they had the number 26 ranked class. So while Chad Morris struggled on the field, he was doing a solid job in recruiting, at least from what on paper you would think would be good players. So that class was there. And if he can bring some of those guys back into the mix, he could at least kind of salvage this year.
What goes into that? You step into a new job. You don't have much time. Wheels are turning all around you. People are committing, and you're wondering, who am I
decommitting from you.
Right. Yeah. How do you handle it? What do you do?
It's a tall order, guys, because you're going in there now in such a limited time. But there's 2 things you can't do. You can't panic, Dari. First, when you get in there, you got to evaluate what your own roster looks like, right? Then you got to decide with the ones that are committed, do we still want these guys? Some guys keep them all. Some guys don't. Because where do they fit in your scheme? If you're a 4-3 defense and you got 3-4 guys committed, do you want to keep them, right? But here's the thing that's changed from when I coached, the transfer portal. That could be a little bit of the great equalizer for guys because they realize, Hop, you know what, even if we whiff, because you can't take people just to take bodies. Yep. So if you whiff, if you don't get exactly what you want, there's always that new transfer portal that you can go to right now for D linemen, O linemen, quarterbacks. It's out there. Look, you're not relying on it, but it's a little bit of relief if you don't get what you want. But by no means do you take a player in any position just to get numbers.
Well, yeah, because that could ruin the culture of your program.
100%.
And obviously, trying to press to get a player in there immediately could have long-term ramifications.
Arkansas, of course, a program in transition. Chad Morris fired after not quite 2 seasons on the job as head coach of the Razorbacks. In comes Sam Pittman, former Razorback assistant, then a Georgia offensive line coach. Now he has come in trying to somehow, some way find some stability, create some stability within that Arkansas program. It was expected that they would not have, as we cruise along on our signing day special, Dari, Chiz, and Hobbs. We didn't expect a huge day for Arkansas. They came in with a Power 5 fewest 6 verbal commitments to this class. How would you assess their day to this point?
Well, they're up to 8, but it's going to be tough sledding. I think anytime you're a head coach coming into the early signing period, as a new head coach, it's very difficult. I think most head coaches like the early signing period because they can put most of the class to bed, know who they need to focus on in January, and most importantly, get started on the next class. But if you're a new head coach taking over a class, you're not trying to get guys to sign, you're trying to get guys to wait. You want that extra month to get him in there for an official visit. So he's taking a different approach than 90% of the head coaches out there right now because he needs to build up this class. Chad Morris struggled on the field, but he did a really nice job recruiting. He did a good job a year ago at the number 23 class. 7 players decommitted when he was fired. So obviously there was some type of a connection that once he was gone, they no longer wanted to be a part of it or at least step away. So of all the new head coaches, Sam Pittman is stepping into probably the toughest situation and trying to turn things around and do so really in a short amount of time, which is nearly impossible. They did get an in-state guy that was huge for them, one of the top players in Blaine Toll. So I think getting that guy across the finish line, but he's got a lot of work. He's got a reputation as a great recruiter, and thank goodness.
Yeah, and I think Barry Odom, bringing him on, is going to be a huge help in this. Look, you don't want to panic and just start taking guys, but at least you have a defensive guy whose reputation is really good, that he can at least go into living rooms from the guys that had already been kind of invested in Arkansas and say, hey, look, guys, this is my vision. I played the position. I've coached the position. I've been a head coach. I've been a DC. This is what we're going to do on defense. I got a great vision for the place because, quite frankly, the defense last year was atrocious. Yeah. And so now you got a guy who's got a great reputation to be able to go in there, and Barry Odom is a good recruiter as well. And at least you'll see some defensive guys, I think, Dari, really start to come on board. But, hey, this is where the transfer portal matters as well. Don't panic. You don't think they're not scouring the transfer portal as well for the positions that they need.
Yeah, and quarterback's one of them. I mean, they've started, 5 of them, I think, over the last couple of seasons. And maybe K.J. Jefferson, the freshman this past year that got some time late in the season, is the answer there. But, I mean, you're changing, ideally, you're changing complete offensive systems again here. So what's the perception of Arkansas from the quarterback perspective?
Well, what was interesting was their quarterback commit was Chad Morris' son. So
right, and he's no longer there.
Right. So that was a connection there that you knew you had no shot of maintaining that when you were going to make that switch. So there for Arkansas, it's going to be really difficult for them to be able to do that. But you talked about the transfer portal. They need to be able to go out and use that and just try to wait until January to put some more pieces. Yes. I think the most important thing, as you mentioned, you should never hire a head coach with that first class in mind, because then you can rush and make a poor hire. I think as a fan base, you got to be realistic, knowing the uphill climb, and that if he's a great recruiter, once he gets on the trail for a full year, difficult times are still ahead. Because what's really interesting about Arkansas, they went from Bielema, kind of pro style, pound the football, to Chad Morris, let's spread it out, let's speed things up, and now they're making a quick turn back again to kind of the Bielema era, and I think they're hoping it's going to go more successfully, but it's the same type of general philosophy. So it's really difficult. I think one of the interesting things as you look around college football with Willie Taggart, with Chad Morris, is the administrations, I think, at times need to be held more accountable, because they really threw that program into a loop. When you're if you're not going to give Chad Morris more time, you've really put that program against the wall, because you're asking him to do a lot to make philosophy shifts and to have to be able to come out and recruit like this. So I think you see some of these hires that aren't working out. It's like, I think there needs more responsibility from the people at the top making those decisions, because it's going to really hurt Arkansas. That's not a quick fix.
All right. You're also asking the fan base to continue to be patient yet again. You mentioned Blaine Toll earlier. He's an ESPN 300 guy, in-state guy. What will he bring this team? Listed as athlete, where will we see him on the field?
I think he's going to project like an edge defender, probably wind up with his hand down as a defensive end. 6'5", 240 pounds, really athletic guy. You get him on campus, figure out what you can do in Aledo.
Yeah. All right, so there you go. Well, again, the challenge with your first recruiting class, Arkansas and Sam Pittman, certainly in it, as are two other programs in this league.
With that said, we went out. We used every day we had on the road, and except for Friday. Friday we stayed in because we had recruits coming in the weekend. We had a wonderful weekend. Our staff did an outstanding job hosting, and when we have a little bit more time for the people to get to know us, and when we get them on campus, we feel like we have a strong opportunity to increase our football team in numbers and in talent. I've had a chance to look at our roster. Obviously, I'd be lying to you if I was as in-depth understanding our roster as what I need to. But, and I don't really want to say in all respect to our players that we have right now, I do know that this particular early signing day, we were just going after the best players at any position that we could get. And we want them to be good kids, and we want them to love Arkansas, but we were just going after who we liked off of film, to be honest with you. I think starting tomorrow and on Friday, I think we'll get a little bit more in depth of what we have. To be honest with you, I know what we have. We've watched a lot of tape on our own current players. I talked to all 80-something on the team Monday and Tuesday. But I would rather not go into detail of what we're going after. I think you guys know what we need, and we do too. I hire coaches because of a lot of reasons. One of them is because they're great people, and relationships mean something. So if you look over this signing day, and you look at Dominique, and you look at Curry, and I mean, you're looking at guys that had relationships, and they were willing to, when their coaches left, they were willing to come with them, and even if it was another university. So I don't know if it has as much to do with Missouri as it does that we happened to hire some Missouri coaches and they came with them, but we wanted those guys, and we were able, because of the relationships, to get them.
We got some news and notes for you around the SEC. Arkansas has hired Sam Pittman as a head coach. Barry Odom, of course, fired from Missouri and now going to be the defensive coordinator there, as well as Kendall Briles. He'll be the offensive coordinator for the Arkansas Razorbacks. I like these hires. Some more coaching news. Of course, Kiffin, the most experienced of the three new SEC head coaches. You see Arkansas bringing in Georgia O-line coach Sam Pittman as its new head coach. The first head coaching gig for him. Pittman, known as a great recruiter. And after one season at Appalachian State, Eli Drinkwitz is the new head coach at Missouri. So when you see all these new guys that are going to be coming into the league, I'll start with you, Coach Chiz, because you are our coach on this set. Which one do you think has the most impact and why?
I think Lane Kiffin. Fan bases need hope, guys. Let's be honest with you. These after the Egg Bowl, this Ole Miss fan base was probably at an all-time low, right? The way they lost the game, they needed hope. Lane Kiffin, he's a very polarizing figure. He comes in there, he did a great job at Florida Atlantic, winning 2 conference championships. He brings in a recruiting acumen. He's got an offensive background in this league, and I think this is just what the fan base needs.
I like Sam Pittman. Sam Pittman, to me, is similar to what Ed Orgeron did at LSU. It's some very eerie similarities. I've contested Greg many a times on TOL. Arkansas got to get back to playing physical football. Like, I think that's the way they need to play in order to compete in this league. Not saying you can't open it up, throw it around the yard. That's why they brought in Browse. I think the energy that Sam Pittman's going to bring to this program, and I've heard from a lot of Arkansas fans after this hire was made. And then when he got Barry Odom, I heard him go over the top because they're confident in the fact that Barry Odom, not only head coaching experience, but calls defenses really well. Gene, you know that as well as I do.
The best hires he made.
Absolutely. I think they did a tremendous job at Arkansas, getting a guy that they're familiar with that's also going to bring back some of that mentality of what we had grown accustomed to Arkansas being.
And look, Kendall Briles is a great play caller, too, so you bring him in as well.
Former Florida quarterback Felipe Franks is transferring to Arkansas. Pig Suey. Tell you what, they've had problems. I think they went through 5 quarterbacks last year at Arkansas. The numbers just don't seem to do it
do very, very well. And so Felipe Franks has the speed, he has the athleticism, and Kendall Briles should help him out. Look at that speed right there. Remember, he got hurt against Kentucky in the second or third game of the season and sat out the rest of the year. He was playing well, and Kyle Trask came in to take his place, and they ended up winning that game and ended up winning 11 games with Kyle Trask and as a starting quarterback. And I wanted to ask you about Felipe Franks because I got to be honest, I would have guessed a lot of landing places for him before I would have guessed Arkansas. What's your take there?
Man, Felipe is somebody who I think, as just a neutral observer, I'm looking forward to seeing in the SEC one more year. I made the comparison. It's Mentos in a Coke bottle. I mean, that's really what it is. It is an explosion of, something that's just kind of unpredictable, and he's as polarizing a player as there is returning in the SEC. I think it's a smart move for Sam Pittman to go after somebody who obviously has a lot of experience now and his game plan for SEC defenses. He's not going to be afraid of anything. Somebody who won a New Year's Six Bowl as a starter at a big-time program, that obviously is going to matter. How much he's going to be able to succeed, I think, is a different discussion. He's got a great group of young receivers, don't get me wrong. It looks like Sam Pittman is going to try and build a really solid offensive line around him, but it felt like Felipe, even with Dan Mullen, was being put in really good positions to succeed. And based on what we've seen, I don't know if Kendall Briles is going to be the guy that's going to maximize Felipe Franks. I just don't. I think Felipe is going to make his mistakes. He is what he is. He is like what Jameis Winston is to the NFL, Felipe Franks is to the SEC. And I think that he's going to provide Arkansas fans with a lot more entertainment than they've had the last couple of years. If you're a program that has won SEC win in the last 3 years, you'll take what you can get. And De'Ara King would have been, in my opinion, the better fit overall. But still, I think Felipe Franks is going to have some really good moments. And I think if you're Arkansas, at this point, you just kind of got to hope that you have a starter who can be there for 12 games, because that's what you haven't had. And I think Felipe Franks is capable of doing that, albeit with some very interesting peaks and valleys along the way.
Oh, I got to ask you, Pat, your reaction to Felipe Franks going to Arkansas.
It's interesting. I brought it up on our show down here, and it was literally all anybody talked about, the legacy. I was on with Chris Childers and Pat Bradley earlier, and Pat Bradley asked me, what do Arkansas fans what can they expect? And I said, a love-hate relationship.
Yep.
It's coming. I mean, he is going to do things that make you. It's like you want to date him, but after a while, you get mad and you can't date him anymore, and then you go back to him. I mean, he's that kind of quarterback. He was very polarizing when he was here, not so much from his actions, but a little bit from his actions. Telling the crowd to shut up. At his home stadium. Going into the crowd at Miami when they were still ball to play, and then he ends up throwing a pick, and that kind of turned people off. So there were things like that, but it was more on the field, just some bad decisions he made, and then some unbelievable plays that he made.
Yeah.
So he was kind of it was kind of love or hate, but it was definitely both.
Well, I told somebody earlier that you just with Felipe, he's going to do great things, but you got to live with the plays that make you scratch your head. If you're prepared to live with that, he's going to do some. Yeah. He's going to do some great things for you. Absolutely.
Dennis Dodd, who was with us yesterday, graded the new coaching hires: Kiffin, Leach, Drink, Pittman C-. Not a good grade there.
I would put Pittman as an incomplete.
Well, sometimes you just have to be decisive and give a grade.
All right. So what would you give? What would your grades be for those four coaches? Lane Kiffin.
I would probably give Kiffin and Leach a high mark. Drinkwich, no way you can. I would probably give him and Pittman an average grade.
Yeah. It's tough to say that one or the other is particularly better of the Missouri and Arkansas
I will tell you what,
hires.
in some ways, I think Pittman might be a better choice.
I almost did the yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I can't help myself.
Because he's the pit boss.
To me, Drinkwich, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way. It's like just like going into a cast of characters and just we like that guy. He's young. He's got 1 year at Appalachian State.
1 year at App State.
He was left a really good team by his successor. I mean, Pittman at least is Pittman fits Arkansas. Does Drinkwitz fit? Does Missouri?
If you're looking for,
a hot young comer. I think Missouri has such a long. If you ask me, I think Arkansas has a better chance of being successful in the next 3 years than Missouri.
Would you have said that before these two coaching hires?
Yeah, I just think Missouri is a mess right now.
I mean, a lot of people looked at Missouri last year, and they had Kelly Bryant coming in, and we were like, man, this team could challenge.
That's true.
In the
there
East.
Is that. Yeah.
They go 6-6, and Barry's fired.
Bottom fell out. They got serious problems there.
The sides, the top, everything fell out. The middle.
I am going to take a flyer. If you're asking me which program are you buying stock in, I'm putting a couple of bucks on Sam Pittman.
Woo pig.
When you look at all of these transfers in the West, which one probably makes the biggest impact?
I think, without a doubt, it's Felipe Franks. This is really going to be interesting. Think about this. This is his third offensive system he's been in since he's been in college, right? Started with Jim McElwain. Then all of a sudden, Dan Mullen comes in. He has a really good year with Dan Mullen. Threw 24 touchdowns, only 6 picks. And all of a sudden, he starts out this year, gets hurt, gets beat out, and now he's going to a place who hadn't had quarterback play in 2 years. Arkansas could not find a quarterback for 2 years. Now he comes into Kendall Briles' system, a very quarterback-friendly system, and we're going to see how this pans out because he brings 2 things to the table: experience and the ability to do both running it and throwing it.
I'm going to say 3, a chip on the shoulder. That's something that Felipe's already had. SEC West, what's the biggest storyline you're looking forward to in the season?
For me, it's got to be the coaching changes. A year ago, we were sitting here on signing day talking about all the coaches coming back. Now you're in the SEC West. New head coach at Ole Miss, new head coach at Mississippi State, new head coach at Arkansas. And then what's also interesting is the changes within their coordinators. Chad Morris going from Arkansas to Auburn. It's helped out. He was able to pull a wide receiver from the Arkansas class, Capers, over to that Auburn class. And then Barry Odom going from Missouri. Now he is with Arkansas, so he's staying within the conference as well. So you got head coaching changes, but key coordinators moving over.
And he didn't even mention Joe Brady and Dave Aranda.
I was going to say,
you know what I mean? It's
Bo Pelini coming back. All right, what's your big SEC West storyline? All right, when you start looking at a program that you think can surprise some people when you start looking top to bottom on their roster, who is that?
Well, I think it's what they're going to do on a recruiting trail, and that's Arkansas. When Sam Pittman came in, he came in with the idea of being a strong recruiter, and he really headed into a very difficult situation. One thing about the early signing period, it is no friend of a new head coach because you're getting that job with maybe 2-3 weeks max to try to salvage that roster and get prospects to slow down. He still has 3 ESPN 300 prospects in his state, 2 of the top 6 players in the state of Arkansas. When Chad Morris was fired, they had 7 decommitments, went from the number 26th ranked class to outside the top 50. Right now, though, he has them moving up in the 40s. He'll probably finish around 40 with the chance to add an ESPN 300 quarterback. We talked about Felipe Franks, but you better develop somebody from within your program, and they got a target tomorrow that we'll see if he's able to land.
And the other player that's going to be committing today is Malik Hornsby, a top 10 dual threat quarterback. Guys, we all know that quarterbacks kind of set the pace in recruiting. They're usually the first guys off the board. So to have a quarterback still available is big, especially for programs like Baylor and Arkansas that got late starts with coaching changes. He truly is a dual threat. This is a young man who's part of one of the top track programs at Thurgood Marshall. He ran a 10.78 100-meter, over 1,300 yards rushing, over 2,500 yards passing, 45 total touchdowns. He truly is a dual threat player with tremendous upside as well.
All right, so those are some of the top uncommitted prospects that are going to sign and announce with us later on here on ESPNU. With the ensuing announcement of Malik Hornsby, ESPN 300 top 10 dual threat quarterback out of Missouri City, Texas, Tom Luganville.
Well, the one thing we've learned, whether it's been at the high school level or the collegiate level, nobody wants to defend a mobile quarterback. And a guy that can create on his own, can be utilized as a designated runner. Both of those things are traits that Malik Hornsby possesses. You see the ability to navigate the pocket. He can take off and run. We heard Craig Hubbard talk about what a wonderful track program there is at the program. And what I think it's interesting, too, is you look at the finalists here, 2 of those programs there, new head coaches. All right, new head coaches.
Arkansas and Baylor.
Arkansas and Baylor.
Yeah, very good. Visited Arkansas a week ago for an official. Has visited Baylor and Dave Aranda last weekend. He's got a lot to choose from. He's flanked by his mom and his sister, his family behind him. Malik Hornsby is about to make his announcement. Thanks for doing it with us here. Malik, what's it going to be?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank God, thank my family, thank my supporters, thank my high school coaches. With that being forward, for the next 3-4 years, I'll be attending the University of Arkansas.
Malik Hornsby is headed to Arkansas from Texas to the Razorbacks. What was it about Arkansas, Malik?
I chose Arkansas. Me and Coach Browse got a good relationship. I know him for 4 years. Coach Pittman is a good guy. The coaching staff is a good guy. Coach Sam Carter's a good guy. And I believe I can come in and make a difference.
What are your expectations there when you get there?
My expectations is to come in and start. And if not, learn the system and hopefully get a national championship.
Arkansas just took a grad transfer quarterback, Felipe Franks. Why did that not scare you off?
Because I'm not scared of competition. I'm gonna come in and compete, no matter where I go.
For Arkansas fans and those in the SEC, what kind of quarterback are they going to see in Fayetteville?
They're gonna see the best quarterback that I can be, day for day, game by game.
Last question. You've known offensive coordinator Kendall Briles for a while, from his time even back in Houston. He's been in touch with you. How would you describe that relationship? How big of a factor was that for you?
Me and Coach Briles got a good relationship. He's been recruiting me since I was a freshman. It played a big part because he just been honest with me. He been truthful. He never lied to me. And his offense, I believe I can go in and do dominant things.
Malik, we see some of the emotion there from your family and your sister. We'll let you continue to share that moment with them. Thanks for sharing it with us. Thank you, Malik. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That is Malik Hornsby from Missouri City, Texas, headed to Fayetteville, Arkansas. You love that answer. You always love that answer. Why didn't that scare you off? It's kind of the setup to what's going to be your answer. And he said, look, not afraid of competition.
Don't be afraid to compete. You know why? Because it doesn't matter where you go. In order to be the guy, you're going to have to compete. You're going to have to win the job. He's going to have to beat out Felipe Franks, KJ Jefferson from last year's class, really talented freshman quarterback that got a little bit of a sniff late in the season. They're going to be more dynamic and more talented and 3 deep now at quarterback than they've been previously, which is huge. And this has been a big day for Sam Pittman in Arkansas. You get the offensive lineman and Marcus Henderson out of the state of Tennessee. Really important to build that program from the inside out. I've been impressed so far with what Arkansas has been able to do.
Really, the whole month of January, I've been impressed because you know, with the recruits that are left, with the transfer portal, the little time that you have to build relationships. They've done a really nice job.
He had 10 days before the early signing period. 10 days.
Right. You mentioned Marcus Henderson, the offensive lineman there. They also landed running back Ebony Jackson in January. They pulled in some transfers. We talked about Felipe Franks. So I think there's some positivity going on right now in the month of January for Arkansas that it's tough to judge them off of this recruiting class because they didn't have a big hand in it.
Right.
But I think you're building momentum for that 2021 class. And what a lot of coaches are looking at now in the month of January is to get ahead in those classes. And how can we start building relationships and building momentum to go out and start getting those prospects? And I think Arkansas is doing that.
Well, and Coach Pittman's an offensive line guy, and our broadcast crew had Arkansas twice this year, and they just weren't very good in the offensive line. And he knows it begins and it ends in the offensive line. Now you add the quarterback piece, and then you start building around that. Right. And is there a magic wand to be waved? No. But the pieces of the puzzle seem to be the right ones so far in early returns for Sam Pittman.
Arkansas has had highly rated recruiting class. Chad Morris was able to do that. Again, there's a lot of momentum from today. Got to go win some football games there in Fayetteville. We'll see how long it takes for Sam Pittman to do that.
The class that we just did, the credit goes solely to our assistant coaches, and they went out and built relationships in a short period of time, and I think that tells you a lot about who we have on our staff. We end up signing 23 players, 15 of them on defense, 8 on offense. We went out with position of needs. We thought those 5 positions were quarterback, tight end, and basically the defense, D-line, linebackers, and cornerbacks. And when I say needs, I'm not talking about talent, I'm talking about numbers. And on our board, our numbers were low from what we considered low on the defensive side of the board and at tight end and quarterback. I think the thing I like most about this group is that they want to be a part of Arkansas. Now you're going to say, well, you know, we know that. They signed with Arkansas. But by 7:47 this morning, we had all 23 scholarships signed. And I know some of those, not all 23, the remaining. We had guys that were in here before, obviously, at midterm. But the remaining scholarships that we had, the kids who signed today had them signed at 7:47. And I think that shows you that they want to be here. They're excited about being here. We're the University of Arkansas. I mean, we should be up there with the elite programs in the country in recruiting. And I don't know what we are right now, but we're not up there with the elite guys. And until we get up there, well, then when we do that, we'll come in here, we'll be really happy. But again, I think you have to surround yourself with people that believe that you're at the best program in the country. And I do, and our staff does. And until we get up there with the elite in the recruiting thing, then we have work to do. Again, I'm really proud to be at the University of Arkansas. I have a great assistant coaching staff that knows how to recruit, and very fortunate to have them.
Quarterback in need for Arkansas, and they got one.
Yeah, Sam Pittman's got to be happy about this. Little time to work as a new head coach. He goes into the state of Texas. OC Kendall Briles played a big role in helping to get Malik Hornsby. He's got tremendous speed, guys. A 10.7 800 meter, but he's also threw for 2,300 yards as a senior, so he can do both.
First, I would assume that this particular signing period is biggest for the more newly hired head coaches, correct? Including the 4 that we just saw.
Absolutely.
How does it work into the level of importance for those guys in particular?
Well, I think, Lane Kiffin just mentioned it. Like, when you get that job, you got to maybe 2-3 weeks max. And then that early signing period, 81% of the class is signed. So now you're left with 19% of the class to try and go out and recruit. I really liked his philosophy there that we didn't want to reach, because that's where you get in trouble, where if you just take bodies and they're not the right fit, now from the very get-go you're trying to dig out of a hole. So it may seem frustrating, and it was kind of a mundane day for Ole Miss. Actually, some players flipped away, but I think that's the right philosophy, to not just kind of press just to bring in bodies.
Yeah, the new signing date has made this thing almost impossible. That's why you see the coaching firings happening early, right? They got it early, so now you're seeing at the beginning of December.
The Chad Morris, Willie Taggart, that kind of
100%,
stuff.
or in the middle of the season, because again, they got to have a guy in place that you're trying to give him at least 3 weeks to recruit, right? If you wait till the second week of December, he's got 5 days, and then 81% of them are gone. So that makes it difficult. But let me piggyback on what Hobbs said. The biggest mistake I've seen coaches make is they panic. They say, "Oh my God, the board's empty." Okay. This is where you screw your roster up, okay? You'd rather take nothing, and I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but that's where the transfer portal, Dari, has really made a difference.
All right, of the 4 first-year head coaches of this league, Hobbs, who had the best day?
For me, Arkansas, no question. They had the most ground to make up. We talked a little bit earlier about the slide that class took when Sam Pittman took it over. To be able to go out and get a quarterback, he also added Marcus Henderson, an ESPN 300 lineman. Jalen St. John at one point was a Missouri commit during the process that went there. Again, 2 former Missouri commits are now a part of this class, so we're seeing the Barry Odom factor come in there. And you talked a little bit earlier about the importance of surrounding yourself with good assistance. And so to come out of this run with 5 ESPN 300 players, to have a top 30 class for Sam Pittman, I think really speaks volumes. And and maybe if you're an Arkansas fan, get you excited about what he could do with a full year on the recruiting.
Yeah, and let me say this too. Now you take a guy like Malik Hornsby, a quarterback, right? Yep. Sam Pittman will be able to recruit offensive linemen. Why is that important for these skill guys, running backs and quarterbacks? Because they're saying, I've seen what this guy has done. I have tangible evidence. What this guy does, who's going to block for me, who's going to put in front of me. If I'm a tailback, I want to run behind it, and I'm a quarterback, I want to throw behind it. And I think that's one of the reasons, other than the fact that there were some Texas ties with Briles, that guys are going to want to come play for him at the skill position.
You get to go first on the final category, best sleeper.
Best sleeper. We talked about him earlier. Malik Hornsby, I think this was a huge get for Sam Pittman. And if you look and see what Kendall Briles is going to do with this Baylor offense that they used to run back in the day, you give him a dual threat guy like this. This guy's a 10, 7, 8, 100 meters. He's 6'2". He's extremely talented, and he can do both well, guys. He can throw the football. He can run the football. This guy ran for 1,500 yards this year and also threw the ball extremely accurate and well. This is a great fit for that offense.
And those of you who may not follow much outside the SEC, he says Baylor offense back in the day. Don't look at the Matt Rule era. That run-first stuff is not what you're talking about. You're talking about RG3.
100%.
Art Briles, Kendall Briles stuff, no question.